In a solemn courtroom, the gavel strikes as an official begins to address the accused, calling out the name of defendant Violette Ramvahan. Her eyes are wide with shock and disbelief, pupils constricting as the reality of her situation sets in. In chains, Violette stares forward as the verdict is declared. She is found guilty and sentenced to death. A memory flashes of a time when her hair flowed freely, a stark contrast to her current predicament, an hourglass and dark roses framing the image. A young woman, her half-sister Mary June, desperately pleads for the court to wait, insisting that Violette had her reasons and should not be killed. Mary June turns to Violette, promising everything will be fine, as onlookers murmur about her kindness and how Prince Claudia could have fallen for someone who shows mercy to her own attempted murderer. But Violette reacts with fury, slapping away Mary June's hand and telling the brat not to touch her. The crowd's opinion turns instantly, whispering that Violette is a snake who can't compare to the gracious Lady Mary June. With chains clinking, Violette stands stoically as the people brand her cold-blooded. The scene shifts to a prison wall, where a memory surfaces of being locked away 3 months prior. Now in a cell, Violette recalls her crime was the attempted murder of her half-sister, and while such an act would normally mean execution, Mary June's pleas reduce the sentence from a convent to life in prison. She admits to herself that she truly despises Mary June. Born into the vile household of Duke Vahan in the kingdom of Durali, her father abandoned her mother for a mistress, leaving the mother to brood without showing Violette a shred of love, making it impossible for her to consider any of them family. Her mother soon grew ill and died when Violette was 16, the same year her father returned home with someone new, a young girl who introduced herself as Mary June. It was her, Mary June, who greeted Violette with a smile, calling her dear sister. She reflects that Mary June robbed her of everything she ever wanted, the joy of being a cherished daughter and 2 warm, loving parents. And then Prince Claudia also chose Mary June, leaving Violette to demand why he didn't love her, a question he answered by coldly stating he just didn't. The question of why haunts her as she recalls hearing the news. The whispers spread that Prince Claudia had proposed to Lady Mary June, leaving Violette to wonder why Mary June was blessed with everything, wishing she had never existed. She remembers Mary June sleeping peacefully while others celebrated the news. A quiet moment passes, focusing on a face lost in thought. Violette believed that if Mary June was gone, her parents would have treasured her instead. Yet, back in the present reality of her prison cell, she realizes the girl she detested was the only reason the judge spared her life. It was a simple truth that anyone who adored Mary June would naturally scorn her. She reached for the love she craved, and for that she was punished. The heavy chains fall to the stone floor. Lying on a simple cot, she realizes she hasn't eaten properly in months, having lost her appetite since her imprisonment. Weak and hazy, she questions if this is the end, sickened by a life of hate and envy when all she ever truly wanted was love. She wonders if things could have turned out differently for her. But she scoffs at the thought, knowing there's no point in asking such a question now. A sudden, bright light fills her cell, and she faintly hears a voice calling her name as she questions what is happening. A maid opens the curtains to a sunlit room, wishing Lady Violette a good morning as she awakens in a canopy bed. Violette sits up in shock, stunned, as the maid comments on the lovely weather. She recognizes her own room and the maid, Marin, in utter disbelief. As Marin pours morning tea, Violette wonders if this is a dream or if she is dead. She takes a sip of the tea, and the nostalgic scent makes her recognize it as Marin's blend, which she always loved. The sudden realization makes her choke and cough, and she yells in shock, startling Marin, who asks if something is wrong. Violette tries to reassure her maid while her mind races, questioning how she can be drinking tea when she should be in jail, the taste feeling all too real. Marin suggests she's still exhausted after meeting her yesterday and should sleep in. As Marin prepares to leave to make a light breakfast, she mentions that Violette will be attending a tea party today, which startles Violette further. Marin informs her that the tea party is at 4 in the afternoon and will be Lady Mary June's debut, a significant event. Now dressed and ready, Violette understands what this means. Marin compliments her stunning appearance, and Violette dismisses her. She pulls out her diary, guessing at the truth. She confirms that her most recent entry is from a long time ago and that, today, is exactly 1 year in the past, the day of a royal tea party hosted just after her father remarried. She questions how it's possible that she has traveled back in time. While she was in prison, she did wish she could do things differently, and as Marin tells her it's time to leave, she grapples with this new reality. Although it's all too much to believe, she knows she must attend the tea party. The carriage arrives at a grand estate where the party is being held. Guests chatter amongst themselves as her family arrives. Whispers immediately begin, with guests pointing out the Vahan family and identifying Mary June as the Duke's love child. Violet observes that Mary June stands out, just as she remembers. She recalls how her father's second wife married him right after her mother, the Duchess, died, and how their daughter was around her own age, causing onlookers to gape at her sympathetically. It is clear to her what everyone at the party is thinking. It feels like a form of torture, being forced to relive her past misdeeds, and she recalls making the most of her position to bully Mary June when a familiar voice calls her name. She turns to see a young man, Yulan, who has found her. He has brought her a plate of sweets, noting how many there are, and she thanks him. He grins, saying he grabbed the best ones for her. This is Yulan Kugers, her childhood friend who is a year younger than her. Yulan is part of the royal family, his father serving as the prime minister, and he is one of the few people she trusts, the only one who knows the full, sordid story of her family. She remarks that it has been quite a while since they last saw each other, then panics, realizing she hasn't seen him since she was thrown in prison, and quickly corrects herself by saying she last saw him when greeting the king. Yulan is momentarily confused by her statement but agrees that it's true. She inwardly scolds herself for the near slip-up, reminding herself to be more careful now that she's a year in the past, just as Yulan mentions hearing about her father's remarriage and her new stepsister. He looks at her with genuine concern, asking if she is all right. She realizes that in her obsession with bringing down Mary June, she had ignored everything else around her. It dawns on her that Yulan was actually worried about her, and she thanks him, reassuring him that she is fine. It's astonishing how long it took her to realize his concern, and she decides to ask another girl if she would like to head indoors with her. As Violet walks away with the other girl, she bids Yulan farewell, leaving him to watch her go with a thoughtful expression. She admits to herself that it would be a lie to say Mary June doesn't bother her anymore, but hating her only led to trouble, a lesson she has learned the hard way. Resolving to stay clear of Mary June, she sits down, only for another lady to accidentally spill a drink on her stepsister, apologizing as her hand slipped. The woman remarks that Mary June's sweet gown is now ruined, as others titter in the background. One of her cronies whispers that Mary June got what she deserved, asking for Violet's approval. Violet remembers this moment. Her cronies, knowing she resented Mary June, would follow her around and constantly harass her stepsister with cruel acts. She knew deep down they weren't doing it for her sake, but were simply taking out their own misery on an easy target, and she was just as petty for letting it happen. Violet turns to her cronies and coldly asks what they are doing. A tense moment hangs in the air. A commanding voice cuts through the murmur, a voice she recognizes immediately. Her cronies gasp, identifying the speaker as Prince Claudia. The prince looks on with a stern expression, asking again what the young lady thinks she is doing at his family's tea party. Violet recognizes him, Prince Claudia Acrusis. As the heir apparent to the throne of Duralia, no one would dare go against his word. He confronts the girl who spilled the drink, stating he saw her ruin the dress on purpose. The girl stammers as the prince demands an explanation, while another guest whispers that she feels sorry for her. Violet steels herself, deciding to intervene, and asks Prince Claudia to wait. The prince turns, surprised to see Violet addressing him. Violet steps in, asking for forgiveness for the interruption but explains that the girl knows she has made a mistake. She promises to chastise her personally and asks the prince to leave her be. The prince's expression hardens as he looks at Violet, concluding that she was the one behind the incident all along. He sighs, accusing her of manipulating her minions to keep her own hands clean, all to torment her own kin. Violet protests that she hasn't done anything, but he glares, telling her she is making a fool of herself. She realizes this was bound to happen, knowing that he's not entirely wrong since she did bully Mary June in the past. Just then, Mary June defends her, telling the prince that Violet is actually very kind to her. Violet thinks that no matter what is said now, those two will fall in love a year from now, and there is nothing she can do to change that. The prince's outraged expression reminds her of the day he accused her of trying to take Mary June's life. She is caught in the memory, frozen by the familiar, tense dynamic between the three of them, with Yulan looking on from the side. Yulan interrupts the tense scene, suggesting to Violet that they go get some of the desserts that have just been brought out. Violet is startled by his sudden intervention, as Prince Claudia turns to ask Yulan when he arrived. Yulan apologizes for intruding and declares that he and Violet will leave, as they are mere bystanders to the affair, ignoring the prince who insists he isn't finished with Violet. Before Claudia can press the issue, Yulon points out that the accused girl is terrified and speechless, implying the prince's questioning is needlessly aggressive. He continues his critique, noting that the prince never even gave Lady Violet a chance to explain herself before blaming her for the entire incident. With sarcasm, Yulon states he is in awe of Prince Claudia's astounding insight, a comment that leaves the prince momentarily stunned. Yulon concludes that arguments should be resolved by those directly involved, as outside parties only get in the way, and that they should leave before adding more fuel to the fire. He turns to leave with Violet, who calls out for him to wait. Now outside, Violet asks Yulon why he would criticize Prince Claudia, worried he might be punished for such insolence, but he winks and tells her not to worry. He calmly states that he knows she had nothing to do with it and the prince had no reason to scold her, before changing the subject to the desserts the bakers worked so hard on. She is taken aback by his defense of her, unable to respond immediately. As they stand by the dessert table, Violet thinks to herself that this conversation never happened in the original timeline and wonders if things will truly be alright, before asking Yulon if he dislikes sweets. He confirms that he prefers sour flavors, while from a distance, Prince Claudia watches them, clenching his fist. Back at the party, the girl who spilled the drink is dismissed by the prince and quickly excuses herself as Violet observes the scene. Mary June looks down at a handkerchief left on the seat, wondering if it belongs to Violet. Arriving back at the Vahan estate, the staff welcomes them home. Violet reflects that she somehow survived the tea party but feels a pang of guilt for not thanking Yulon and for getting him involved, just as her father appears and tells her to come with him. In his study, her father informs her that Marijun's dress was stained and asks Violet to be honest about her involvement, noting that Mary June kept quiet when questioned. She is incensed that even her father, who wasn't even there, is implying she was responsible, as he tells her to listen closely. He states that he let her do as she liked before, but now that she's not an only child, she must honor the family and care for Mary June like a good big sister. She curtly replies that she will bear his words in mind, internally mocking his talk of honoring the family. Later, rolling in her bed, she fumes, thinking she doesn't want to hear lectures about family from the very man who deserted his own. Calming down, she reflects on her family's history, her parents' political marriage, her mother's unrequited love for her handsome father turning into a possessive fixation, and considers that perhaps she should pity him as well. Still, she feels no real desire to make up with her father, shuddering at the thought and wondering what she should do now. A day has now passed since the tea party, and looking at her hand, she accepts that this new reality is certain. She has truly gone back in time by 1 year. This past year was when everything started, a dark time she does not want to relive, and she vows not to be consumed by jealousy again. While she won't pretend they can be one big happy family, she ponders her options, even considering running away. A brilliant idea strikes her: the convent, a place where she can take the veil, escape her family, and support herself with the needlework she learned in prison. She brightens at the prospect of a new start where she won't be associated with the Vahans or have to see Mary June every day, vowing to become a nun and live far away. The scene flashes back to the tea party, where Yulon found her, offering a plate of sweets. At the academy grounds, other students watch Lady Violet, commenting on how elegant she always appears. Though she seems composed, her expression is troubled as the onlookers guess she must be contemplating a complicated book. In reality, she is reading a book titled, How to Join a Convent, exasperatedly wondering just how one becomes a nun. Her name is Violet Remvahan, and she was once locked away for attempting to murder her half-sister in a jealous rage, but after passing out on death's door, she awoke a year in the past. This miraculous second chance has given her an opportunity to redo the entire year, and her first step is figuring out how to join a convent, which requires written permission from a guardian. She grimaces, picturing her father's furious reaction to a duke's daughter taking the veil and asking if she will stop at nothing to shame him. Realizing she doesn't need her father's permission specifically, she formulates a plan. She must endure for a few years until she graduates at 18, at which point she can get permission from a distant relative and finally leave the Vahan family. Her thoughts are interrupted by the sudden arrival of 3 other girls, her former cronies. They announce they've been looking all over for her, inviting her to a special lunch their family chef has prepared in the garden. With a polite but distant smile, Violet apologizes and turns them down, stating that she'd like to spend some time alone at the Royal Tanzanite Academy. As she walks away, she overhears the girls whispering, assuming her mood is because of the fiasco at the costly academy where most students are royalty or nobility. They correctly guess that she is despondent because her half-sister has just transferred into a first-year class. But Violet reminds herself that while she was jealous the first time, she has sworn not to relive her past mistakes. Her new resolution is to avoid drawing attention, knowing that if she causes trouble, her father will only watch her more closely. Instead, she will keep away from everyone and live a life of solitude. She believes she can protect herself by becoming a nun, and so far, she has managed to avoid her former social circle now that Prince Claudia already hates her. She thinks that the widely known family scandal should make people wary of approaching her, but she suddenly senses someone staring. A young man with glasses approaches, asking if she is having lunch and offering to accompany her to the dining hall. She is completely flustered by the unexpected interaction. He greets her, noting it's odd to see her alone, and she recognizes him as Lord Mila, wondering why he of all people is here. He is Mylania Dior, a third-year student and the smart, gentle, and popular vice president of the Tanzanite Academy's student council, who wonders where her usual companions are, as he never expected to see her eating in the main dining hall. She explains that she has discovered some value in solitude and, since the weather is nice, she thought she'd eat outdoors, a fact he finds lovely. He says he is glad they ran into each other because he wanted to ask her a question, which confuses Violet since they are barely acquaintances. He asks what happened between Prince Claudia and Yulan at yesterday's tea party. Caught off guard, she lets her surprise show, which he takes as confirmation that something did happen, apologizing for tricking her into an answer. He explains that Claudia has been touchy all morning and that the prince only gets sour when Yulan is involved. Since Yulan is her longtime friend and distantly related to the prince, he thought she would know. Realizing there's no point in being cagey, she clenches her fist and decides to tell him, admitting there was a squabble that cropped up because of her. She apologizes, explaining that she made Prince Claudia lose face at the tea party. Mila is surprised, noting that Yulan always avoids Prince Claudia and that he never expected him to step in like that. The encounter reinforces Violet's need to avoid future confrontations, as the tea party mess has now drawn Lord Mila's attention to her, but she is startled when Mila suddenly reacts to something over her shoulder. He has spotted Mary June and wonders what she is doing here. He looks down, thinking, "Don't tell me she's..." before apologizing to Mary June. Claiming he has just remembered something urgent, Lord Mila quickly excuses himself and rushes away up a flight of stairs, leaving Violet confused. Suddenly, Violet hears a voice shouting, calling someone common trash and questioning their gall for coming to this school. She sees her former cronies cornering someone, and one of them whispers, "Poor Lady Violet." This is the exact moment she was afraid of. She remembers calling Mary June to this very spot to bully her, taunting her about her mother being a mistress. She internally scolds herself, realizing this is no time for nostalgia, as she doesn't want to get involved but knows she'll be in trouble if they ruin Mary June's uniform. An outburst from Mary June cuts through the commotion. Mary June stands her ground, shouting that her mother isn't a tramp and asking the bullies what they know. She declares that she hasn't done anything wrong and that they should be embarrassed for ganging up on someone. Just as the lead bully asks if Mary June even understands her situation, Violet steps in, asking what they are doing. She declares that judging people on their birth proves how empty their hearts are, shocking her former cronies. Mary June looks on in disbelief as Violet approaches the other girls. Bowing her head, Violet asks them to pardon her little sister's rudeness. She asks them to forgive Mary June for her sake, explaining that as a new member of the nobility, she isn't accustomed to the academy's etiquette, and the girls, trusting her, agree not to cause trouble. She quietly tells the girls that while they may have mixed feelings, she can assure them of her sister's birthright and that they needn't worry about her status as a noble. After the bullies leave, she turns to Mary June with a sigh, asking what she was thinking. Mary June tries to follow her, but Violet stops her, telling her she mustn't speak so bluntly and must keep her rank in mind from now on. Her stepsister demands to know what she means, asking if she is supposed to just grin and bear insults for the rest of her life. Mary June protests that being attacked isn't right, but Violet simply says her name. Violet asks if she writes people off completely just because they disagree with her. Mary June falls silent, unable to answer. Violet explains that no one can ever fully agree on everything and that some people's morals will always conflict with hers, but as nobility, they stand above commoners to guide them and decide what is right and wrong. She looks at Mary June with a serious expression, telling her she is part of the Vahan family now. She addresses her formally as Lady Mary June Vahan, whose eyes widen in response. With a final, "Excuse me," Violet turns and walks away, leaving Mary June to ponder the responsibility that divides nobles from peasants. Prince Claudia watches from a distance as Mary June is left standing alone. Violet continues on, her expression unreadable. Mary June remains, contemplating what was just said to her. Alone again, Violet slumps against a window in frustration. She berates herself, wondering why she lectured Mary June when she just wanted to calm the situation and keep a low profile. She recalls her own words, "Judging people on their birth proves how empty your hearts are," and grimaces, thinking she of all people should know how true that is. She reflects that Mary June's words would have been brave and praiseworthy among commoners, but that kind of mindset will only invite trouble among aristocrats, a group she knows is prone to getting into trouble. She justifies her actions to herself, claiming she isn't trying to help Mary June, but since she plans to become a nun, Mary June will need to be the one to uphold the Vaughan family name in her place. As she walks through the school halls, other students wish her a good night, and she returns the pleasantry. A realization dawns on her. While being alone is easier and less demanding, she finds it painfully boring, and she doesn't know how to pass the time after school while avoiding her father's house. She wonders if she could spend her time on something more meaningful, just as she overhears two girls talking about a cute new cafe that recently opened in town. Her ear twitches as one of the girls mentions the cafe is famous for its pancakes. The thought of pancakes is an epiphany. She realizes that since she was always the center of attention before, she never had a chance to explore the town of Tulane, but now she can finally look around. After checking the first-year classrooms and not seeing Yulan or Mary June, she decides against going, unable to bear the thought of all the first years gawking at her. She had wanted to treat Yulan as a thank you for his help, but with him gone and no other friends to invite, she supposes she'll give up on the idea for now. Just as she turns to leave, an attendant calls out her name. A scene of an ornate room is shown, focusing on an elegant tea set. Inside the student council room, Prince Claudia dismisses an attendant. Violet sits across from the prince, completely bewildered as to what is going on. The attendant had asked her to come to the student council room, and she, assuming Lord Mila wanted to continue their chat, is now shocked to find herself facing the student council president instead. She braces herself, recalling Lord Mila's comment that Claudia had been touchy all morning, and assumes this must be about the tea party. She remembers being in this very room before, in her past life, when Claudia had summoned her after finding out she'd bullied Mary June. The memory of his harsh words from that day still stings, how he told her he would never choose her and accused her of hurting her own sister for attention. Still, she can't blame him because back then it was true, she had been behind all the bullying, but now the situation is different. Prince Claudia's voice cuts through her thoughts, and he apologizes for insulting her at the tea party. The unexpected words leave her stunned and speechless. She can't process what he just said. He continues, admitting that he failed, that he jumped to conclusions and accused her without pausing to think or confirm the truth. She is utterly shocked as he bows his head to her. Flustered, she tells him he needn't bow, protesting that a prince can't apologize to lesser nobility, especially where someone might see. He rises, stating it was presumptuous of him to pass judgment, and mutters, "I knew it," under his breath. He tells her to leave the past behind them, that she came to the party as his guest to enjoy a cup of tea, and that's all. Overwhelmed, Violet can only look up at him, her heart pounding as she whispers his name. An angelic version of herself appears in her mind, smacking her and demanding why she's getting so giddy when she's supposed to be graduating and taking her vows as a nun. The internal scolding brings her back to her senses with a jolt. She reaffirms her goal. She is going to live quietly and avoid attention. So what, she asks herself, is she doing getting involved with someone the entire kingdom has their eye on? As the prince looks on inquisitively, her mind races, questioning what she is doing having tea with Prince Claudia when her entire plan to leave the Vaughan estate for a convent depends on lying low and avoiding attention. She decides she must find an excuse to leave, but a knock at the door interrupts her thoughts. Yulan enters the student council room, telling Violet he found her and that a classmate said she was looking for him. He had simply thought she might be in here, and he grabs her arm to get her attention. Overjoyed at the perfectly timed interruption, Violet seizes the opportunity, telling Yulan she was looking all over for him and that they should go. She shoves a blushing and confused Yulan out the door ahead of her, quickly thanking Prince Claudia for the tea before making her escape, leaving the prince to watch them go. The attendant can only stammer as they rush past him into the hall. Safely away from the student council room, she sighs in relief, feeling that was a close call. Later, they are in a busy street in town, filled with the chatter of people. The cafe is quaint, and the pancakes are piled high with cream and berries. Sitting at a table with Yulan, Violet beams, thanking him for coming with her and admitting she thought she had missed her chance to visit. As she eats, Yulan asks what happened, questioning why she would duck out of a rare private meeting with Prince Claudia when she has always pursued him in the past. The word, pursued, makes her pause, as a memory of her past self's obsession with the prince comes flooding back. She remembers constantly praising him, telling him he was amazing for being top of the class again. In her previous life, she had heard that the royal family was considering girls from Tanzanite Academy as potential brides for the prince, and she was determined to be chosen. She chased after him whenever she could, a behavior she now realizes was painfully annoying. Back then, with her father never home and the Vahan estate feeling frigid and dark, she had desperately wanted someone to love her and tried to become the perfect bridal candidate. The prince was seen as perfect, gallant, talented, smart, and athletic, and she believed whoever he courted would be the happiest woman in all of Duralia. She had approached him with the selfish motive of becoming his betrothed, thinking that if she were tied to a man the whole kingdom idolized, she could finally find a reason to smile despite her misery. Yulan's voice, asking if she is all right, pulls her from the dark memory of chains and imprisonment. Snapping out of it, she apologizes, confessing that she is ashamed of ever thinking her fawning would win him over, as she was only after him for her own sake, not out of any real affection. She tells Yulan with newfound conviction that she won't pursue Prince Claudia any longer, adding that Mary June suits him much better. A thought suddenly strikes her, and she freezes. Before, she did everything she could to destroy their relationship. But now, she realizes their union could work in her favor, though Yulan points out that Marijan's half-peasant blood might be a legal obstacle to marrying the prince, given how strict the royal family is. Yulan muses that perhaps Marijan's beauty and outspoken nature might be seen as a breath of fresh air, and Violet can't believe she didn't think of it before. If Mary June marries Prince Claudia, her own desire to join a convent will seem trivial by comparison, and everyone, including her father, will surely give her the breathing room she needs. It's a perfect solution, two birds with one stone, but as she is lost in her scheming, Yulan points out that she has something on her chin. He gently wipes the food from her chin with his finger. His gesture is so unexpectedly sweet that she breaks into a heartfelt laugh, thanking him. Yulan freezes for a moment, a blush creeping up his neck, before asking if she's all right. Violet is confident that since Prince Claudia is already intrigued by Mary June, this new plan won't take long to succeed. She pictures their engagement as her one-way ticket to a convent, as elsewhere, Prince Claudia sits in his office and tells a visitor to come in. He looks up, asking if it's Mila, but the person who enters is Mylania Dior, his vice president. Mylania says he has brought the paperwork for next month's arts festival and asks if Claudia is disappointed it's him. Claudia pays him no mind, instead asking about Lady Violet, noting she hasn't come by lately. Mylania recalls how she used to try and barge into the student council office every day, asking if Prince Claudia was in. As a vision of Mary June floats in Claudia's mind, Mylania asks him if he misses Violet. Claudia flatly denies it, thinking to himself that Mylania is easy to read, just as Mylania brings up Violet's little sister, Mary June, who recently enrolled at the academy. Claudia confirms that he met her at the tea party, and when Mylania asks what he thought of her, the prince replies that she struck him as quite sweet. He recalls her spiritedly defending herself and her mother against the bullies. He hopes she settles in soon, his hand clenching slightly as Lord Mila observes him thoughtfully. Mylania watches his president, a knowing look on his face. A week later, Violet is brooding alone in the dining hall, muttering to herself that Prince Claudia doesn't seem interested in Mary June. She broods over the strange turn of events. It's so odd to her, and she wonders why they aren't pairing up as they should be. Last time, they hit it off right after Mary June arrived, and despite her interference, they were engaged before she even knew it. A voice calls her name, breaking her concentration. It's Mary June, holding a lunch basket and cheerfully suggesting they eat outside since the weather is lovely. Violet panics internally, wondering why Mary June is coming to see her when she is desperately trying to save herself by avoiding her. She clears her throat and asks Mary June if there isn't someone else she'd rather have lunch with. Mary June looks downcast, admitting that she's been trying but still hasn't made any friends, which wasn't what Violet meant at all. As whispers start up around them, Violet realizes that turning Mary June down would be proof of them being foes, while accepting would just be trying not to make waves, so she feels cornered. Dejectedly, Mary June says she'll go if she's being a bother. Trapped, Violet sighs and invites Mary June to have lunch with her. They sit in a tense silence in the garden. The silence is broken by Mary June, who chirps about how delectable the sandwiches look, proudly stating that their maid Marin made them herself, while Violet wonders how they ended up eating together. She sighs, reflecting that since she scolded her, Mary June has become oddly attached to her, a development that would have driven her past self crazy. She wonders why events are playing out so differently, noting that Prince Claudia hasn't approached Mary June at all since the tea party. Last time, Claudia fell for Mary June without her doing anything, and Violet definitely saw them fall in love, so she questions what could have possibly changed. She wonders why he hasn't taken an interest in Mary June yet. Then, a shocking realization hits her like a bolt of lightning. Is it because she is being nice to Mary June this time around? She remembers how her past self made Mary June cry all the time, giving her a damsel in distress air. But now, without the bullying, Mary June is just a happy, smiling, cookie-cutter girl. The thought makes Violet shudder with horror. She realizes with dread that they are not falling in love, and if they aren't engaged by the time she graduates, her convent plan is completely ruined. She knows this is obviously different from last time, but she can't start bullying Mary June again, so she wonders what she should do. Mary June interrupts her thoughts, excitedly mentioning the upcoming school arts festival and how she can't wait to go since she's never been to one. As Mary June explains that one representative from each class gets to perform, Violet gets an idea. She stands up so abruptly the table clatters, startling Mary June. "That's it," she declares, telling a confused Mary June that she should be the one to represent her class on stage. In a dim room, a young Violet pleads with her mother not to leave her as maids look on in distress, but her mother only asks why her husband won't come home. Reaching a hand toward Violet, her mother coldly wishes that she were him instead. Violet gasps, her eyes flying open as she is pulled from the dream. Her maid, Marin, rushes to her side, asking if she is all right and explaining that she cried out in her sleep. Sitting up in bed, Violet touches her head and dismisses it as just a nightmare, reassuring a concerned Marin that she is fine. At a family dinner, Mary June excitedly calls for her parents' attention. With a brilliant smile, she announces that she will be playing the violin at the upcoming school arts festival, and her parents express their delight. Mary June then adds that her lessons with Violet are starting today, turning to her sister for confirmation and catching her by surprise. Wanting to escape before her family can pry further, Violet quickly bows and excuses herself, but a voice stops her. Her father calls her name as she pauses at the door. He tells her that he is pleased she is helping Mary June and encourages her to do her best. But then he adds a warning: she should ensure that poor tutelage doesn't muddy the Vahan name. With a tight smile, Violet simply replies, "Of course, father." Once in the hallway, her composure cracks and she stumbles, as Mary June calls out to her in concern. She grumbles to herself, wondering if her father must insult her daily and always have the last word. Marin appears, asking with a worried expression if Violet is pushing herself too hard. Violet looks at her maid, momentarily confused. She quickly deflects, saying she is fine and was not worried about the nightmare, and announces she is leaving for school, admitting internally that she'd rather not walk with Mary June. As she walks down the hall, Marin watches her go with a pained expression, clenching her fist. Violet thinks to herself that she still cannot forgive this family. She makes her way toward the Grand Academy building. Inside a magnificent theater, Mary June exclaims that the place is amazing. Violet explains that this is the school's largest hall, used for many ceremonies and events, and that she got them permission to practice here for a week, telling Mary June to meet her here after school. Mary June is shocked they are practicing at school instead of at home, but Violet explains that performing on the actual stage should help reduce her stage fright. Her sister glows with admiration, thanking her profusely and calling her the best for thinking of everything, while Violet privately admits she just wanted to avoid their father as much as possible. The first lesson begins, with Violet telling Mary June to play something simple since she already learned posture in music class, noting that her posture already looks good. But the moment Mary June draws the bow across the strings, a horrible screech fills the hall, making Violet cringe. She immediately tells her to stop, asking what those sounds were, as a tearful Mary June apologizes. Violet asks if she is serious, and Mary June explains that while she has been attending music class, the teacher told her she has no talent. Violet sighs, realizing that while aristocrats learn violin as children, Mary June grew up a commoner and has no experience. She offers to show her how it's done. She explains that the basic form is to hold the violin securely, but not too firmly, as Mary June watches with wide eyes. Violet then plays, her eyes closed as a beautiful and flawless melody fills the theater. Unseen by the sisters, Lord Mila stands in a side entrance, listening intently. He watches Violet's performance, intrigued by what he is hearing. His observation is interrupted by the arrival of Prince Claudia. The prince asks why Mila is hiding in the theater instead of patrolling the halls, but Mila explains he was drawn in by a lovely melody. From a balcony overlooking the stage, Claudia is surprised to see Violet and Mary June together. Mila confirms it is them on the stage. He remarks that it is odd to see them together, but Claudia disagrees, stating that even with different mothers, it's natural for an older sister to guide a younger one. Mila stares at the prince, who asks what is wrong. Mila brushes it off, saying it's nothing and that he supposes such an attitude befits an heir. As Mary June claps and calls Violet's performance beautiful, Mila reflects on the commonality of noblemen taking mistresses. He notes that such affairs sometimes produce offspring, but since Mary June was born out of wedlock, she and Violet are not normal sisters. He recalls hearing the Vahan family scandal, how Violet's mother, Lady Belrose, grew ill and died of grief over her husband's infidelity, and doubts that Mary June, with her fondness for Violet, knows the full story. What he finds most surprising is how much Violet is like her mother. Elsewhere in the school, a classmate calls out to Yulon, asking if he wants to grab a bite to eat on the way home, but Yulon declines, saying he's busy. He is then approached by Gia Forte, a prince from a neighboring land. Gia asks Yulon if he has plans with the princess today. Yulon is clearly annoyed, telling Gia to please stop calling her that and asking why he can't just call her Lady Violet, while Gia wonders why it would be rude to call her by her first name. Yulon says he is not meeting her, but something is bothering him and he would just like to check in on her. Gia Forte smiles knowingly. He remarks that, yes, she is Yulon's princess. The scene returns to the theater, where Claudia is asking Mila why he is hiding away. In a sunlit classroom, a voice calls out to Lady Violet. She sits alone at a long table, looking up as someone enters the room. A classmate informs her that someone is here to see her, and as Violet looks toward the door, she sees Prince Claudia leaning against the frame. He notes that she has been busy lately helping her sister practice for the arts festival recital and asks if it is going well, much to her surprise. She wonders how he found out, but confirms that it is, and he tells her that he came to give her something. Her eyes widen in confusion as he holds out an envelope. He explains that it is a ticket for the arts festival recital, stating it would be unfair for her to have to watch her sister perform from backstage. She is shocked to see the royal family's crest on the stationery, realizing that since there is an extra seat, it must be in the monarch's box. Her mind races with the implications. If another student sees her there, the entire academy will be abuzz with rumors that she is the prince's fiancée. Despite his insistent expression, she smiles gracefully and curtsies, thanking him for his thoughtfulness. He watches as she holds the ticket for a moment, but she politely declines his offer, stating that such a seat would be wasted on her. When he asks if she is worried about his family members pestering her, she clarifies that she is simply worried about Mary June and wants to stay backstage to support her. She tells him that numerous other ladies would be thrilled to sit in that seat and asks him to forgive her for declining his kind offer. With a gentle smile, she suggests he invite another of their schoolmates instead. After excusing herself, she walks away, internally screaming that her heart nearly stopped from the stress of actually turning down the crown prince. A shocked Prince Claudia, unused to being turned down, is left standing alone as Yulon appears in the doorway. Yulon watches the prince leave, finding it odd that he came to speak with a student alone and without his usual servants in tow. The two meet in the hall, acknowledging each other by name. Yulon confronts him, stating that he heard about the Vahan family scandal and thought he could do Violet a small kindness. He accuses the prince of making a habit of patronizing people to satisfy his own definition of chivalry, pointing out that there was already enough gossip at the tea party. By publicly defending Mary June, Claudia only drew more unwanted attention to her and Violet, ignorant of how it truly affects them. He continues, stating that while Claudia may have felt he rescued Mary June, all he really did was bail out a girl who hasn't learned to fend for herself, while simultaneously accusing Violet of bullying. Because Mary June can't stand her ground, other girls still pick on her, making her situation dismal. Yulon suggests that if Claudia truly wants to help, he should reach out to Mary June, not Violet. He tells the prince that he surely understands how cruel people can be to illegitimate children. He clarifies that he doesn't care what Claudia does, nor is he concerned if Mary June gets hurt. But if Violet ends up being blamed for Mary June's difficulties, he will not stand for it. With a glare, he warns the prince that anyone who harms Violet will have to deal with him. Prince Claudia is taken aback by his intensity, remarking that Yulon has changed, as he never used to seek him out or want anything to do with him. On the day of the festival, Yulon watches from a distance. On stage, a performance ends to a round of applause. The announcer then introduces the next performer, Duke Vahan's daughter, young Lady Mary June. Mary June takes the stage with her violin, her performance captivating the audience. The crowd murmurs in appreciation, finding it beautiful and worthy of the Vahan name, surprised that a former commoner could play so well. Peeking from backstage, Violet feels a surge of relief. It's going well and Mary June is pulling it off. She sighs, glad that her preparations paid off. She had checked everything before Mary June went on, just in case any bullies tried to interfere again. The moment the performance ends, an ecstatic Mary June rushes off stage and asks Violet how she was. Violet gives her reserved approval, but Mary June insists it was all because of her coaching. Violet reflects that she didn't help much beyond giving pointers, and that Mary June soaked up her advice like a sponge, making her internally plead for her to smile like that at the prince instead. She realizes now that she never understood how Mary June surpassed her at things before, but it's no wonder. Mary June simply has a lot of natural talent and excels at everything she puts her mind to. An attendant approaches Prince Claudia, informing him that his violin has been tuned and he will be shown on stage shortly. The announcement makes Violet realize that the final performer is the prince himself. Seeing the perfect opportunity for her plan, she gets an idea and excitedly pushes Mary June forward, telling her to go greet Prince Claudia. She frantically whispers instructions, telling her sister that this is the perfect time to catch his eye. She coaches Mary June to be ladylike and tell him she's eager to hear his performance, but Mary June just blurts out, "Break a leg." To Violet's surprise, the prince accepts the well wishes, thanking Mary June by name. As an attendant calls for him to take the stage, Violet thinks her plan went surprisingly well, wondering if the performance charmed him, but a sudden noise catches her attention. A loud ripping sound echoes from above as the prince looks up. From her vantage point, Violet sees the rigging for a large stage light has snapped. She watches in horror as the heavy fixture plummets towards the stage, where the announcer is introducing Prince Claudia a crucis. Backstage, panic erupts as Violet realizes Prince Claudia's cloak has been ripped. An attendant shouts for a new cloak, but another protests that his clothing is specially ordered. The frantic attendant asks if anyone there knows how to sew. Violet considers stepping in, but remembers that while she learned to sew in prison, her past self at this point in time had never touched a needle. She worries it will seem bizarre for a duke's daughter to know how to mend clothes and glances at her sister, Mary June. She thinks it would be best if Mary June, the former commoner, were the one to save the day. An official berates a young servant, blaming him for the accident and calling it a catastrophe. The chaos continues to unfold backstage. Mary June suddenly steps forward, telling the official he shouldn't be so mean. Violet is mortified, watching as Mary June glares at the stunned official. The attendant, flustered, clears his throat and apologizes while Violet internally questions what her sister is doing. She tries to get Mary June's attention, reminding her that Prince Claudia is the heir to the throne and she shouldn't make a scene, but Mary June insists the poor boy shouldn't be made a scapegoat. Onlookers begin to whisper, asking what is wrong with Mary June and calling her actions beyond the pale as Violet grows more exasperated, asking if she's blaming the prince for the rip. From behind a piece of scenery, Prince Claudia speaks, admitting that Mary June is right and he was distracted. He says there is no point in chastising the boy any further. Instead, he insists they need to find a solution. Seeing no other choice as the audience waits, he decides he will simply head on stage in the damaged cloak. Violet immediately protests, insisting that royalty must not appear disheveled in public. She declares that she can't just stand by and asks the prince to wait. He looks over his shoulder at her, surprised. Pardoning herself, she tells the prince to follow her. She promises it won't take long as she leads him away. Mary June can only watch, confused, as Violet guides the prince to a private area. A short while later, she has finished mending the cloak, explaining that she had to rush but that the audience shouldn't notice. The prince is shocked, stating he never imagined she knew how to sew, while Violet silently thanks goodness she brought a sewing kit in case bullies tried to ruin Mary June's gown. When he asks where she learned, she smiles cryptically, thinking of how he once threw a book at her in her prison cell, and tells him they should hurry so the audience doesn't have to wait. An attendant calls for Prince Claudia, who looks at Violet as if he wants to say something more. But in the end, he just tells her to forget it, excuses himself, and walks away, leaving her to thank him. She watches him go, confused, as the attendants escort him to the stage, marveling that the cloak has been mended. In the audience, Prince Giaforte of a neighboring land is yawning. He complains to Yulan that he's starving and that this kind of formal music is only popular with Duralia's dull upper crust. Yulan asks if he's sure it's okay for him to be sitting here instead of the VIP section the royal family reserved for him. Yulan explains that he chose this seat because he knew Violet wouldn't be in the audience, and if something happened, he'd have trouble running to her aid from the VIP box. As the lights dim, Gia says it's finally time for the last performance. Yulan's eyes are fixed on the stage as he announces the prince's arrival. Prince Claudia takes the stage and plays his violin, his performance filling the grand hall. From their seats, Yulan and Gia listen intently. Backstage, Mary June wanders the halls, wondering where Violet went. She comes across the attendant and the servant from earlier, who are discussing the incident. The attendant is relieved the prince was forgiving, noting how the girl insulted him by standing up for the servant. They agree that if the prince had gone on stage with a ruined cloak, it would have been on their heads. The attendant asks who mended the cloak, and the other replies that Duke Vahan's eldest daughter apparently took it. They assume she must have rushed it to a maid. Mary June overhears this and recalls Violet's lecture about how nobility must always set an example. The recital ends to thunderous applause, and Violet returns backstage, wondering where Mary June has gone. Her old cronies immediately swarm her, asking if it was her with Prince Claudia and if she was the one who mended his cloak. Violet dismisses their wild imaginations, claiming she just knew there was a seamstress in the next room, but one of them asks if she fixed it herself, noting a noblewoman wouldn't do a servant's chore. As the girls invite her to congratulate the prince, she declines, saying she has other business, relieved that she managed to take him aside before they could swarm him. Alone now, she reflects that she was so busy with Mary June, she completely forgot something important. A year ago, in her original life, she was the one who performed at this recital, hoping to finally catch Prince Claudia's attention. Back then, he and Mary June were sitting together in the audience. The prince and Mary June look at each other. She remembers how she struggled to escape her pain, yearning for the joy she thought she would find in his arms, but her motives were entirely self-centered. She thinks about how she never truly tried to get to know him. In retrospect, she finds her past actions laughable, thinking that at least the other girls pursuing his fame and fortune had their hearts in the right place compared to her. A quiet smile touches her lips as she reflects. She sees him clearly now, a foolish, idealistic prince, honest to a fault and straight as an arrow. As she walks through the hall, she hears other girls calling out to the prince, telling him how stunning he was on stage, and she realizes her feelings for him were never really a crush or love. A group of girls offers a bouquet to the prince, and Lord Mylania steps in to accept it on his behalf. The prince thanks them, but his eyes glance elsewhere as if looking for someone. He recalls Mary June's words of encouragement from before he went on stage. Violet realizes that all she can say for certain is that Prince Claudia was the first boy she ever truly liked. At the Vahan estate, the Duke praises his daughter Mary June, telling her that her performance at the festival was excellent. His wife agrees, adding that the nobles in the audience had nothing but praise and that she is proud to have such a talented daughter. Mary June beams, giggling that her success was all thanks to Violet's help and turning to her sister for confirmation. Violet flinches as her father dismisses Mary June's praise, stating that Violet only coached her for a few days. Violet forces a smile, agreeing with her father that Mary June's success was due to her own hard work and that she hardly did a thing. An attendant arrives with a message about an appointment from Master Vahan, and the Duke excuses himself. As he leaves, Mary June protests, but he is already gone, a small dog yapping at his heels, leaving Violet to think that he said exactly what she expected. She reflects that it doesn't matter, as she never expected gratitude from him, especially after he pressured her about not muddying the Vahan name. A quiet moment passes in the hallway, with Marin watching from a distance. The maid approaches, asking Lady Violet if she'd like a nice bubble bath. She continues, offering to wash her back and hair and even give her a pedicure as well. Violet asks what's wrong, and Marin explains that she thought she might enjoy some pampering as a small reward for all her hard work, since she always bathes alone. Marin then says she can tell at a glance that Violet has been neglecting her hair, and with renewed determination, she tells her mistress to leave it all to her. In the bath, Marin gently washes Violet's hair with a pitcher of water. As she is being cared for, Violet reflects that she only feels at home in this house because Marin is there for her. Back in her room, dressed in a nightgown, Violet sits on her bed. She thinks about the mishaps at the arts festival, recalling how Prince Claudia was about to react before she rushed him away. But she concludes that her plan to pique his interest in Mary June seemed to work. She just hopes nothing else happens, and wonders what he was about to say to her backstage before he left. A knock on her door interrupts her thoughts, and assuming it's Marin, she invites them in. To her shock, it's Mary June, who apologizes for intruding and wishes her a good evening. Violet stammers, asking what Mary June is doing here. Mary June apologizes for bothering her while she is relaxing but asks if she has a moment. When Mary June asks if they could talk, Violet gets an awful feeling about it but reluctantly agrees. Mary June then asks if they can talk in her room, please. Violet's eyes widen in surprise and apprehension. She is led into Mary June's room, feeling uneasy. Mary June cheerfully offers to pour her some tea, since they have already eaten. She tells Violet to sit anywhere she likes, but Violet freezes, wondering what she has gotten herself into. As Mary June prepares the tea, Violet questions why her sister would invite her here. Mary June offers her a cup, and Violet is suddenly struck by a memory from her past life. She recalls smashing a teacup, complaining about the cheap tea her father was served. In the memory, her past self berated the servants for not remembering their master's tastes, as her father looked on in disappointment. Her father had then apologized to her on behalf of the servants, asking if she preferred a different tea. Mary June's voice pulls her from the unpleasant memory, asking if the tea is too strong. Violet, realizing she was dwelling on the past again, reassures her it's wonderful. Mary June is relieved to hear it. She asks if Violet always brews her own tea, complimenting her skill, but Violet says she just practiced because she has always wanted to invite her over. Violet is taken aback by the sincere admission. A gentle moment passes between them. Mary June says she has been thinking about what Violet told her before. She admits that Violet was right, that she was naive and foolish, and that since her rank has changed, her attitude and behavior need to change too. Yet, she continues, she still doesn't think what she said back then was wrong, as it bothers her how rank affects how people treat one another. She is still on the fence about what's right and wrong, but she is starting to see the pressure that nobles are under and is willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. Violet listens quietly, a thoughtful expression on her face. Mary June looks at her, a serious expression in her eyes, but says she has decided to do her best. She clenches her fists with determination. With a bright smile, she declares her resolve to become a full-fledged Vahan daughter. Noticing Violet's silence, Mary June apologizes for asking her over when she must be tired and says they should call it a night, knowing Violet shouldn't have come. As Violet gets up to leave, Mary June asks if she might invite her over again sometime. Violet agrees and wishes her a good night, leaving a surprised but happy Mary June behind. Mary June beams and wishes her a good night in return. Violet walks down the quiet hall, her expression somber. She reflects on Mary June's pure and naive nature, thinking that if only they weren't sisters, she would adore her as much as anyone else. But her father dotes on Mary June, and his blood runs in her veins. She reaffirms to herself that she won't and can't love Mary June, the little girl who is lovely inside and out. She wishes Mary June would just forget about her, the sister who will one day vanish from her life. In his office, Prince Claudia looks over several thank you notes from festival attendees, thinking that the moment he lets his guard down, he won't be able to help despising her, as Lord Mila tells him to leave the letters for later. Mila gestures to the cloak Claudia wore for the recital, noting that the servants told him what happened and that it would have been shocking for the prince to wear a ripped cloak on stage. He adds that someone repaired it so quickly and did excellent work. The prince reveals that it was Violet, much to Mila's surprise. Claudia admits that he was going to perform despite the rip, but Violet mended it in seconds. The two look at each other, processing this information. Mila concludes that this makes sense, that it's just like Lady Violet to try and win him over while he's in trouble, watching him like a hawk. But the prince simply says, no. Mila asks why not, and Claudia explains that while he would have agreed a week ago, he doesn't believe so now. He recalls her past fawning behavior, how she would always praise him and insert herself into his presence. But now, he says with a thoughtful expression, he doesn't think she has feelings for him anymore. Prince Claudia reflects on his past assumption that Violet's behavior changed due to her mother's death, noting that she used to be unbearably calculating. Lately, though, he thinks to himself that she doesn't seem to pay him any mind at all. Lord Mila interrupts his thoughts, playfully asking if the prince could perhaps be in love, adding that's what it sounds like to him. Claudia is flustered by the suggestion. He takes a step away from his desk. Mila tells Prince Claudia that since he will one day be Duralia's king, if he truly believes Violet is the right woman to rule beside him, then as his friend and retainer, he will arrange it. The prince looks out the window as Mila bows, his hand clenched at his side, and tells his friend that he may have anyone he wishes. After Mila leaves, Claudia continues to look out the window, a troubled expression on his face. He remains lost in thought. In the school dining hall, Violet looks up from her meal as someone asks to sit beside her. It is Yulon, and she happily invites him to sit, surprised that he found her here after not seeing her in her classroom. He takes a seat, apologizing for the long search and commenting that it's still odd for her to eat here, while she replies that it's nice now and then. She explains that ever since visiting Marijin's room, she has been avoiding her invitations to lunch and needed to find a place with fewer people, though she admits that trying to find friends for Marijin first would be tricky. Yulon notes that she is only having dessert and warns that she will faint if she doesn't eat a proper meal. She dismisses his concern, saying she will be fine, as an image of her small sandwich and many desserts flashes across the screen. She insists she still gets her nutrients from vegetables, but Yulon correctly guesses that she only eats them when her maid, Marin, is around. Their conversation is interrupted by the loud arrival of Prince Giaforte, who thunks a massive pile of bread onto their table and complains that he looked all over the dining hall for Yulon. Yulon scolds him for taking too much food again, but Gia retorts that going back and forth is a pain, so he grabbed tons at once. Gia then leans towards Violet with a grin, asking if she is Yulon's princess. Violet is completely stunned by the question. Yulon immediately grabs Gia by the collar, shouting his name and telling him that he has gone too far. Yulon angrily tells him to stop calling her that, but Gia ignores him, taking Violet's hand and introducing himself as Giaforte. Violet asks if he is a friend of Yulon's, and he confirms they've been pals since middle school, though he is not from Duralia. She greets him, noting his olive skin, silver hair, and unique accent, and correctly guesses from his amber pendant that he is from Sina, a country famous for its amber mines. She asks him why he called her princess, and he explains that Yulon won't shut up about her, so he wasn't sure what else to call her. When she says he can call her whatever he likes, Yulon protests, and Gia asks if he should call her Lady Violet instead. Violet is surprised, having never seen this flustered side of Yulon before, as Gia teasingly asks if Yulon would prefer he settle for Miss Vio. After lunch, Gia and Yulon walk her back to her classroom, and she thanks them. Yulon stops her, asking if he could borrow them again since exams are coming up, and Gia is confused by the request. He is referring to last year's exam questions. The Royal Tanzanite Academy is a prestigious school where it has become a tradition for upperclassmen to give underclassmen the previous year's exams. Yulon explains that since the faculty turnover is low and the instructors are exceptional, the exam questions don't change much from year to year, and he asks if she is busy. He blushes slightly, admitting he has questions about some class notes and asking if she would be able to tutor him. She recalls how last time she crammed all by herself, just wanting to beat Marijin and impress Prince Claudia, but still lost in the end, and realizes she doesn't need to do that this time. Since she has already taken these exams once and doesn't want her grades to slip and anger her father, she thinks studying with Yulon might be nice and agrees to help. Yulon beams, overjoyed by her answer. He thanks her profusely for agreeing. She smiles, then suggests they meet in the library after school tomorrow since the classrooms might be in use, and she impulsively invites Gia to join them as well. Yulon and Violet look at each other warmly. After the students have left, Lord Mila stands alone, adjusting his glasses and wondering what to do about the situation. The final panel shows Yulon's overjoyed expression once more. Nearly 3 months after being sent back in time, Violet reflects that she is finally settling into her strange new life, having decided to study with Yulon for the upcoming exams. But her new life is not going exactly as planned. In the library, Yulon asks for her help with a difficult question on the page before him. Across the table, Prince Claudia is also tutoring, explaining a sentence structure to Marijin. Marijin understands the explanation and asks if she should change the line accordingly. Beside her, Lord Mila smiles, encouragingly telling Lady Violet not to be shy and to ask him anything she likes. Surrounded by the unexpected study group, Violet stares blankly, wondering how this happened. Just an hour earlier, things were much simpler. She and Yulon were studying alone in the library, and he had just asked if his answer to a problem was correct. She had confirmed his work was great, gently chiding him for needing validation when he already knew how to solve it. He had admitted with a smile that he couldn't help asking, hoping she might have congratulated him if he got it right. In that quiet moment, she had felt a deep sense of peace, realizing this was the contentment she had been striving for and hoping it would last forever. A lot has happened since she went back in time, but she was glad to have this peaceful moment with Yulon. But her peace was shattered when Mary June appeared, calling her name. Mary June was thrilled to find her, exclaiming that she had been studying at the school all along, which is why she couldn't find her in their library at home. Noticing Yulon, Mary June introduced herself and asked if she was interrupting anything. After Violet explained that she was tutoring Yulon, Mary June became excited, asking if they were studying together and pleading for Violet to help her too. Violet was struck with horror at the request. She realized that with her big mouth, she had ruined her own peace, and knew she'd be in trouble with her father if she refused to tutor Mary June alongside Yulon. Mary June asked Yulon if it was true that everyone studies off last year's exam questions, and he then asked Violet if she would need to borrow questions from a third year. Violet said she would be fine, privately thinking that it wouldn't matter how well she did on her exams, as everyone would just fuss over Mary June anyway. Her thought was cut short by the sudden arrival of Prince Claudia, who offered to get her the questions if she needed them. With Prince Claudia and Lord Mila now present, Violet was completely bewildered as to why they were in the students' library. The prince asked Mila if he still had the questions from last year, and Mila confirmed that he had held on to the questions from the past 5 years. When the prince offered to lend Violet his, she stammered that she couldn't possibly ask that of him, as onlookers began to murmur her name. Mila then suggested that since they were all studying, they should move to a quieter space, the student council's private library, where the old exam questions are kept. An overjoyed Mary June asked if they really could, her excitement sealing their fate. And now, stuck in the private library, Violet questions if her plan is a complete failure. She sighs, wondering why a simple tutoring session had to go so completely off the rails. She recalls her 3 golden rules for reliving the year: don't bully, don't squabble, and don't date, and laments that despite trying to avoid everybody, she is now socializing more than ever. Prince Claudia had suggested that he help Mary June, since Violet couldn't tutor them both, and asked Mila to assist Violet with any questions she might have. Violet realized that while unexpected, this was exactly what she wanted, as it would allow Mary June to show Claudia how smart she is. 2 birds with 1 stone. But a new worry surfaced. What if Yulon had only suggested studying together as a way to get closer to Mary June? As Yulon asked her for help, she looked at him and thought that the only problem with her plan was that he was probably annoyed. For generations, the Kugers family head has served as Duralia's prime minister. But Yulon's real father is King Gabriella Crucis. His mother, the king's mistress, died not long after giving birth, and since the king was already married and had an heir in Prince Claudia. Yulon, despite being second in line for the throne, was adopted by a childless branch of the royal family. She reflects that Yulon and Claudia are half-siblings, just like her and Mary June, and that only they could possibly understand the rift between them. Prince Claudia's voice snaps her out of her deep thoughts, asking if she's tired since she has stopped writing. She quickly denies it, but he suggests they take a breather and offers to bring everyone some refreshments. He turns to Yulon, patting his shoulder. He asks Yulon to lend him a hand. He explains with a smile that he couldn't possibly ask the ladies for help, and that a student council member needs to be present when the private library is in use. Mila adds that besides, Yulon is the only one who knows what she prefers, right? Yulon and Mila share a knowing look, and Violet realizes Mila is trying to put him at ease. Seeing her opportunity, Violet encourages Yulon to stretch his legs, saying the room is stuffy and some fresh air would be a good idea. Yulon agrees, and as he and Mila leave, he says they'll see her soon. She cheerfully tells them to take a break, but as the door closes, she realizes her mistake with a gasp. Now she's stuck alone with Mary June and Prince Claudia. Violet reflects that sending Yulon away for snacks was a good idea in theory. But now she is stuck at a table with Prince Claudia and Mary June, and the silence is incredibly awkward. She feels she has to say something, noting that Mary June has clammed up now that it's just the 3 of them. Breaking the silence, she asks Prince Claudia if she may ask his opinion on something to help do the Vahan name justice. Relieved to have a topic of conversation, she eagerly awaits his response as he explains that the country that grows the tea for the student lounge has had a cold snap, damaging the leaves. Because the student council pays for the lounge's products, he is now looking for a backup blend of similar quality and price, as they never needed one before. He asks if she knows of any tea that fits the bill, and Mary June excitedly chimes in that Violet knows tons about tea. Mary June elaborates that the kitchen staff told her how well-versed Violet is on many different kinds of tea. She turns to her sister for confirmation, asking, "Right, Violet?" Violet asks which tea the lounge usually serves, and the prince replies that it is Moketh. She recognizes the name, thinking that Moketh is one of the best and most popular teas sold in Duralia. It is a gourmet tea favored by nobles, with few blends that can compete. After a moment of thought, she suggests serving Cardina tea this time of year. The prince recognizes the name, recalling that the leaves are grown in a small country southwest of their own. Violet confirms this, explaining that while the country exports less tea than others and Cardina isn't well known, it is sold at a lower price than Moketh. She adds that while the harvesters normally sell dried leaves at this time of year, they also sell fresh leaves, which are currently in season. She remembers that tea made from those leaves was the first thing she tasted after going back in time, when Marin brewed her a cup. Claudia observes her thoughtful expression and correctly guesses that Cardina must be a favorite of hers. She enthusiastically confirms that Cardina is absolutely delicious. She immediately flails, embarrassed by her own passionate outburst, but the prince simply says he'll order a crate for late spring. She asks if he is sure about choosing a tea based on her tastes. But he replies that as nobles, it is their duty to seek out novelties and innovations, making this a perfect chance to try something new. He looks at her and adds that besides, she likes Cardina, doesn't she? A small smile plays on his lips as he says he is interested in trying it himself since she praised it so highly. Genuinely touched, she thanks him warmly. She thinks to herself that it will be like a dream to drink her favorite tea at school. Claudia remarks that she is truly an expert, and Mary June agrees that it was a good thing she mentioned it. The prince watches her with a soft, curious expression. Meanwhile, Yulan and Mila return with refreshments, and Mila tells a fast-walking Yulan to slow down or he'll trip. Mila tells him not to worry, to just pick up his own pace, a comment Yulan finds blunt. Mila adds that he supposes Yulan needn't be on his best behavior around him. Yulan retorts that being nice to Mila doesn't do Vio any good. Mila sighs, remarking that Yulan never changes and that everything revolves around Lady Violet. He then reveals that he knows Yulan was behind the group gathering, that he knew it was fishy. He says it was too odd for everyone to visit the library at the same time. Yulan tells Mila he doesn't care to play along with his schemes and that he only agreed to the study session at Vio's urging. Mila smiles, saying that Yulan overestimates him, as he didn't arrange for Lady Marijan's presence. He then observes that Lady Violet has grown quite charming lately. Not long ago, he reflects, she was petty and self-absorbed like the other ladies pursuing the prince for his riches, but ever since her little sister showed up, the difference has been like night and day. Now, she is humble and at times appears noble and virtuous, which has caught Prince Claudia's eye. He watches her through the doorway. Mila concludes that the Lady Violet he has seen lately is fit to marry Prince Claudia. He tells a shocked Yulan that this can't be that surprising. He explains that one of his duties is to watch the young ladies around the prince to ensure he chooses a suitable bride, and in many respects, Violet would be a good match. She is of high rank with adequate beauty and manners, and what's more, the Vahan family is drowning in rumors. An engagement to the crown prince would turn that morbid curiosity into envy. He is sure such a development would thrill Lady Violet, even if students still talk behind her back. Yulan clenches his fist, realizing Mila's intentions. He angrily calls both Mila and the prince idiots. Mila calmly asks if he honestly thinks that's what Vio wants, but Yulan retorts that it's obvious she's tired and just trying to keep her head down, and he will only do what Violet wants. Mila watches him, unimpressed. He states that it's as simple as that, and trying to scare him off is pointless. He tells Yulan to hurry so he doesn't keep her waiting. Yulan looks away, asking if he is sure about this. Mila carries a tray of refreshments. Yulan follows, thinking to himself that of course he is sure. There is nothing in the world he cares about more than Vio. There hasn't been, not since that one moment. But he thinks that would only matter if Vio herself chose him. Back in the library, a clatter makes Violet jump, pulling her from her thoughts. Yulan and Mila have returned, and she welcomes them back, thanking Yulan for getting the treats. As Mila enters with his own tray, Violet asks what they talked about, and he replies that it was just about different kinds of tea. He announces that they brought juice and pastries from the dining hall, and they should have a snack before hitting the books again, much to Marijan's delight. Yulan stands silently watching the others. After Mary June has to leave to meet with a teacher, the study session continues, and Prince Claudia remarks that the tutoring seems to be helping. When the day is done, Violet thanks Lord Mila for inviting them, and he tells her to be careful on her way home. She then turns to Yulan, thanking him for everything today and telling him to take care as well. He just says, "Thanks," in a quiet voice and turns to leave, making her wonder if something is wrong. She watches him go, a look of concern on her face as Mary June looks on from a doorway. From the other end of the hall, Prince Claudia and Lord Mila wave goodbye, Claudia with a slight blush on his cheek. She turns away, a faint blush on her own cheeks, as Yulan watches her from down the hall. His eyes are filled with a deep, unspoken emotion. Yulan notes that it is getting quite late as he and Violet leave the library. He asks if she needs to hurry home, but she says no, explaining that she let Mara know she would be out late studying and that her father won't complain since she was with Mary June. Yulan acknowledges this, a quiet moment passing between them. Violet then turns to him and apologizes. He is taken aback by her apology, insisting that it was all right and that it wasn't her fault the student council members showed up. She explains that she feels she should apologize because he was being considerate when they had planned to study on their own, only to be interrupted by Mary June. He tells her not to worry, that he is not mad and was just happy they got to study together. He walks on ahead, a thoughtful look on his face. But then he admits that he is a little frustrated. Violet looks up at him, confused by his confession. He turns to her, explaining with a sad smile that he feels like he was the only one who couldn't help her with anything. He says that he can't tutor her and knows nothing about tea. Still, he tells her he would like her to rely on him. She considers his words for a moment. She then suggests that to thank him for studying with her, she will treat him at the cafe they visited once exams are over, saying it has a new special. She gently takes his hand. He looks down at their joined hands, surprised. Looking up at him, she tells him that he is wrong. She explains that she never got a chance to say it outright, but it's thanks to him that she has been able to keep a stiff upper lip and do her best at the academy. She says that because she knew he was there for her, she didn't get lonely, and because he smiled at her, she could keep smiling. Yulan is stunned speechless by her heartfelt confession. She smiles softly, a faint blush on her cheeks. She tells him that his eyes always reassure her, that they remind her of the sun, and that they shimmer in the right light. She finishes by saying they are gentle and, yes, breathtaking. Her words echo in his mind as she touches his face, pointing out the shimmer in his eyes. Those same words trigger a powerful memory, and he realizes she said the same thing back then. It was 7 years ago, and that was the moment he started to like his own eyes. He remembers being a young boy, surrounded by bullies in a garden. He had been shoved to the ground with a sparkling smile on his face. The other boys had taunted him, calling him a bastard and telling him not to get a big head just because his eyes were the same color as the prince's. He had tried to hide the hurt, winking as if it didn't bother him. They had told him his eyes were nothing like the prince's, just a cheap, gilded color. But a young Violet, dressed in boys' clothes, had appeared and declared that she thought they were breathtaking. She had appeared before a young, startled Yulan. He remembers thinking about who this girl was, as she apologized for interrupting but said she couldn't stop herself when she heard them. He had wondered if she was a boy, but didn't think so. She had been so pretty, and she had glared at the bullies, saying she heard them blabbering. The two boys had run away in fear. She had then turned to him, extending a hand and asking if he was all right. She had told him he was banged up and should head to the infirmary, but she didn't know where it was, and asked if he liked his eyes. He recalled thinking that his gilt-colored eyes were hated by everyone, as they clearly marked him as the king's illegitimate son. Violet had told him that she had been bullied before too. She had spoken of the rumors about the Vahan family, about being bullied by her own mother. He had heard the stories from royal relatives, about how Duke Vahan ran off with his mistress. He recalled the rumor that the abandoned and ill Lady Vahan would dress her daughter in men's clothes to ease her pain, since the girl resembled the Duke. And he had realized then that this must be the girl from the rumors. He remembered her looking down at him with a sad smile. She had told him that no one can be somebody they're not, or become a false version of someone else. She had insisted that he was real, that he was himself. With tears in his eyes, he had listened as she told him his eyes were magnificent, like the sun. He remembers how, in that moment, she looked more beautiful than any noblewoman he had ever seen. After that, he began to follow her everywhere. He had followed her like her baby brother, and everyone else thought she wore boys' clothes because she liked it. Whenever he saw her, he would run to her and stay close by her side. Because she always welcomed him with a bright smile and open arms, he couldn't help wanting to be by her side all the time. It wasn't until later that he realized that feeling was love. He remembers waiting for her in the garden one day, as she had promised to come read with him. He had looked for her inside the mansion. Peeking through a doorway, he had heard her voice talking to Marin. He heard her ask Marin to please tighten her corset. Marin had warned that pulling it tighter would hurt, but Violet had insisted it was all right, and her maid had reluctantly agreed. From the doorway, he had watched, realizing with a jolt that he had been oblivious and naive. The words she had used to save him, "No one can become somebody they're not," had stuck with him. He had never noticed, his heart pounding in his chest as he saw her in pain. He had realized then that those same words were torturing her. By the time he started middle school, Violet had stopped wearing boys' clothes. But Lady Vahan couldn't accept that her daughter had matured, and locked herself in her room, rejecting Violet for failing to embody the Duke. He had hated himself for being so powerless, wanting to save her but being unable to help. At that point, Vio had started to change. Though she never lost the beauty he'd first noticed, her personality began to warp, and it had hurt him to watch. He had figured the least he could do was stand by her so he could support her when she needed it. But he had fallen in love with the crown prince that everyone adores. In the end, she didn't choose him. She had told him she wanted the prince to love her, and he had believed that if the crown prince could save her, he wouldn't care about his own feelings. He had thought that if she was happy, then he would be too. Back in the present, he has stopped in his tracks, lost in thought, and Violet asks him if he's all right. She asks if he forgot something, but he apologizes, saying he was just imagining celebrating with her once exams are over, and she asks him to pick a good spot. He agrees, thinking to himself that he had wanted her happiness from the bottom of his heart, but when he left it in Claudia's hands, her path led to a tragic end, and he had made up his mind. He vows that he won't let that happen again. If the only other option is the prince stealing her from him, then this time, he will make a move. The scene ends on an image of Prince Claudia, surrounded by lilies. Marin enters the room with a tray, announcing that the chef has sent Lady Violet some tea cakes, and Violet thanks her, making a note to thank the chef later. As she sits on her bed, Violet muses that she'll put on weight, to which Marin replies that she should put on more weight. Marin specifies that she should gain weight particularly at her waist and around her thighs, but not in her chest area, much to Violet's flustered annoyance. The flat-chested maid then deadpans, asking if that was sarcasm aimed at her, while a frantic Violet insists that's not what she meant at all. In a classroom, an instructor announces that the term's last exam is over. Students file out of the room, their term finished. Violet lets out a sigh of relief as the instructor wishes everyone well done. She reflects that even though she was taking these exams for the second time, she had forgotten plenty of answers but feels she didn't do too badly. A cheerful voice calls out to her. Yulan and Gia are waiting for her, and Yulan congratulates her on finishing her exams. She thanks him and apologizes for making them wait. Gia suggests they head to the cafe early to celebrate before it gets busy, asking if she's hungry. Violet congratulates Gia on finishing his exams as well, and he explains that he finished early and has mostly been napping, which surprises her as she didn't realize he had a sweet tooth. Gia asks if she isn't coming along to celebrate, but Yulan seems confused by the question. Violet explains that she just needed to chat with Yulan and plans on heading home, which makes Gia laugh, saying he won't crowd them. He wishes Yulan good luck and tells him to get lost before waving goodbye, leaving Violet to wonder what he needed as Yulan tells her not to worry about it. As they walk to the cafe, she expresses surprise that he found out about the new item since he doesn't even eat sweets, and he explains he heard a girl mention the new chocolate pancake in class. The words, chocolate pancake, make Violet shriek with excitement, and she composes herself with a cough, embarrassed that she got carried away. Yulan leads her to a table, telling her to have a seat. She thanks him, looking at him with a soft expression. As she watches him, she reflects that she has always seen him as a cute little brother. She remembers how they spent lots of time together as children, but now he holds himself with grace and is so chivalrous when they're together. The chocolate pancakes arrive, a mountain of chocolate and toppings. She thinks that they have been close for so long, yet she never noticed this change in him. As they leave the cafe, he warns her to watch her step. She thanks him, noting that he's always been friendly. But she wonders when he became such a gentleman. To make up for her choosing the last spot, she tells him that he can pick where they go next. He says he needs to run an errand somewhere that isn't especially fun, and she eagerly offers to join him. He leads her through an alleyway to a small shop. She looks inside and asks if it is a stationery shop. The shopkeeper welcomes Lord Yulan, who explains his pens are wearing out and asks to drop 3 of them off for repair, a service he always uses here. Violet remembers him mentioning his pen giving him trouble while they were studying and realizes he has used it since middle school. She asks if he makes a habit of looking after his supplies, as she always has Marin handle hers, and he confirms that his portfolio is also falling apart. He explains that while people say it would be easier to just buy a new portfolio, he's grown attached to this one and wants to take care of the things that are important to him. Violet finds his sentiment wonderful, as he muses that if something can be repaired, he wants to cherish it for life. She looks at a book on the shelf. She tells him that he treasures his things so much, she bets they're happy with him. He seems touched by her words, asking if she really thinks so. She smiles and confirms that she does. She steps over to look at a shelf, and Yulon follows her with his eyes. The shopkeeper informs him that the repairs will be done in about an hour, and Yulon notes how convenient it is to swing by on the way home from school. He glances at Violet, asking if she has much time to spare. She pulls out her pocket watch to check, saying that it's still early, but that it would be a drag to just stand around for an hour, so she agrees to go somewhere and sit down. As they walk, she asks him what happened to his watch, since he hasn't been wearing it. He gulps, admitting he lost it a couple of days ago, and she remembers this is a recurring problem for him. She recalls that he always frets about losing his watch, even though he takes such good care of his other school supplies, and that she has returned it to him repeatedly after finding it left behind. She asks if this is the 4th time he's lost it, but he corrects her, saying it's the 6th, which she exclaims is even worse. He complains that he hates wearing a watch because the band feels tight and hinders his movements, making his wrists stiff. She thinks about his tall frame and thick, knobby wrists, imagining it must hurt when his watch knocks against something, but she tells him it's still best to be able to tell time outside of class. He concedes her point, and a thoughtful look crosses her face. She gets an idea. She asks him if he's tired or has anywhere else to be, and when he says no, she brightens. A moment later, she is pulling a surprised Yulon by the hand. He asks what's the matter, and she says yes, there is a place she wants to visit. She tells him with a brilliant smile that they are going shopping for his reward. They arrive at a clock shop, which Yulon didn't realize was in the area. She explains that someone mentioned her own pocket watch was made here, and since he studied so hard for his exams, she's going to buy him one that he can clip to his school bag. Inside, she looks over the selection, thinking that many of the watches would suit him and that choosing will be tricky. She tries to pick out a few, but finds them either too small or otherwise unsuitable. She asks Yulon if he's even looking, but he just smiles and says he'll be happy with anything she chooses, which she says is beside the point. She gets an idea and asks to see his pocket watch to get a sense of his taste. She explains that she mostly cares about functionality and has never chosen something for its design. He examines her watch, noting the light blue aquamarine set in the center, and says that it's subtle but beautiful and suits her perfectly. She explains that Marin gave it to him as a birthday gift back in grade school. She recalls Marin's promise to always be beside her regardless of where she is, and that the watch was meant as a good luck charm. It was the first present she ever received. That gift, she says, made her feel seen and loved for who she is, and Yulon, understanding its deep sentimental value, says he couldn't choose the same one. He then spots a different watch. It has a violet motif, and he points it out, saying it's just like her name, which makes her laugh. He decides that he would like that watch. She expresses concern that it might be too pretty for a man, but he is undeterred. He tells her that he'll follow her lead. He will make this watch his good luck charm. She looks at him, a blush rising to her cheeks. She tells him that as long as he likes it, the decorations don't matter, and asks if he'll take good care of it. Yulon promises that, unlike his wristwatch, he will never lose this one or forget it someplace. He smiles, looking down at the watch with the violet motif. He holds the watch in his hand, a gentle expression on his face. He looks at her, his eyes soft. He thinks about her as he holds his new gift. The scene ends on a close-up of his thoughtful expression. The shopkeeper returns Yulon's repaired portfolio, and Yulon thanks him. A title page is shown with the text, "I swear I'll cherish you." He and Violet smile at each other warmly. Outside the shop, Yulon thanks Violet for the day and promises to treasure the wristwatch, though he feels guilty that he was the only one to receive a gift during their post-test celebration. She assures him the delicious pancakes were enough for her and is glad they found something he likes. He then tells her he has another token of gratitude for her. He holds out a beautiful ornate hairpin with a round gemstone. He explains that he wanted to give it to her today. She recognizes it as an ornamental pin with an amber stone and asks if this is what he was speaking to Gia about earlier. He confirms he was retrieving what he had requested. He apologizes for framing it as a token of gratitude, admitting that he just wanted her to carry something that matches him, as the special gemstone from Gia's kingdom has the same golden hue as his eyes. She accepts the gift with a radiant smile, telling him she is very happy. Looking down at the pin, she promises to use it with care. That night, back at the Vahan estate, Marin tells Lady Violet that she will fix her hair before she retires for the night, and a smiling Yulan accepts. As Marin gently combs her hair, she asks if her time was well spent today. Violet smiles fondly, replying that she enjoyed herself immensely. Marin looks at her lady's reflection, stating that her happiness is what's most important. As Marin bids her good night, Violet stops her. She asks her maid a question about her hair arrangements for the morning. Holding up the amber pin, she asks if Marin could please use this from now on, and Marin understands and thanks her. After Marin leaves, Violet sits on her bed and lets out a sigh of relief, realizing that the pin is the same one she was wearing right before she traveled back in time. She can't believe she would receive it once more in this life. She clenches her hand, reminding herself that she must keep her objective in mind, as she has been too carefree lately and occasionally forgets that her life had already ended in tragedy once before. She finds it strange that although she received the exact same item in her previous life, she thinks much more fondly of it now, and she wonders why. In the hallway, Marin pauses, lost in thought. It has been a while, she thinks, since she saw Violet make such a gentle expression in this house, probably not since the day she gave her the pocket watch. She is a little disappointed that she wasn't the one to present this new gift to her, but she knows Yulan Kugris and trusts him to a certain extent, as he has been visiting the estate for a long time. She accepts that her one and only mission is to protect her beloved lady's heart, and though it makes her sad that the one who swoops in to rescue her won't be her, she resolves that when that day comes, she will prepare the best seat for that special someone, no matter who they may be. In the student council room, Lord Mila presents President Claudia with a document for his review. Claudia sighs that there is still more work to be done, but Mila points out that the heaps of paperwork are just what accumulated over the examination period. As he looks out the window, Claudia remarks that the academy has come a long way, and Mila agrees, noting that a self-governing organization composed entirely of students is a rare sight unheard of in foreign countries. Mila finds it odd that it's just the two of them and asks if they could increase the number of members, but Claudia reminds him of the trouble they had last time when female students flocked to join. Mila smiles knowingly and asks if perhaps the prince is hoping for a certain someone to join, a suggestion that Claudia denies. A grand palace stands under the night sky as Mary June arrives for the summer retreat, exclaiming how grand it is. In the carriage beside her, Violet watches her sister's excitement. With a strained smile, Violet agrees that it is thrilling, but internally wonders how things ended up this way. She recalls that the Royal Tanzanite Academy traditionally hosts an annual summer retreat, which is framed as a simple holiday but is really an opportunity for the royal family to find a suitable partner for the crown prince. A few lucky blue bloods are invited to spend time at the summer palace, and Violet remembers being ecstatic the last time she was invited, going all out for the occasion, but now the lavishness holds no appeal for her. She had clenched her fist, resolving that this time she wouldn't go, looking forward to a quiet holiday free of aristocratic foolishness. But she had realized that staying home would just depress her, and considered visiting Yulan instead. Lord Mila had then appeared, announcing he was following up on the summer retreat invitations. Mary June had been shocked to hear Violet wasn't coming, and Violet had tried to make an excuse about the chilly weather, planning to relax indoors at Yulan's. Mary June declared that if Violet wasn't going, then she would rather not go either. Violet had called her a silly girl, insisting that as a newly minted noble, she must attend, but Mary June had been insistent, saying there was still so much she wanted to do with Violet at home. The thought of being constantly tailed by Mary June and forced to be nice to her for the entire break had seemed like total hell to Violet. As Mary June called out her name, Violet had abruptly changed her mind. Looking out at a garden, she had announced that she thought she would go after all. Now at the retreat, Violet laments that Yulan had to get sick and bow out, leaving her with only Mary June to talk to, but she had steeled herself to babysit her for the trip. She reminds herself of her true goal, to keep a low profile until she is old enough to become a nun. With any luck, this retreat is the perfect opportunity to make sure Mary June will end up with Prince Claudia, just like before. If Mary June is welcomed into the royal family, the Vahans can expect prosperity and security, and society will concentrate entirely on her. To carry that off, Violet resolves to gladly support her sister however she can, and seeing Prince Claudia nearby, she encourages Mary June to go speak with him. But Mary June just asks why. Violet is momentarily confused, thinking she can't be misremembering that Mary June was Claudia's fiancée in the original timeline. While his indifference makes sense since Violet hasn't been bullying her, she wonders why Mary June isn't pursuing him. She decides to find out from her directly, asking if, since it's been a while since she enrolled, any handsome young lord has caught her eye. Mary June says she has pretty much found her feet at the school, but seems confused by the phrase, "caught my eye." Violet clarifies, asking about the study group they had before the exams, and Mary June immediately brightens, exclaiming that Yulan is delightful. She gushes about how gracious Yulan is with everyone and how his exam scores were first in their class, adding that she tried her hardest but it was no contest. Stunned, Violet asks what about Prince Claudia, but Mary June clarifies she meant another gentleman from their study group. She thinks about Yulan being top of his class and how he must have studied really hard. Frankly, Mary June continues with a smile, she prefers Yulan's company to theirs. She explains that after the arts festival, she made a few new friends. But everyone adores Violet, she says. She looks at her sister with genuine warmth, her eyes shining. With a bright smile, she tells Violet that she is so proud to be her sister. The heartfelt declaration makes Violet's mind go blank, and she clenches her hand, asking if Mary June still likes her, even though she once tried to kill her. Mary June is confused by the sudden, strange question. Realizing her slip, Violet looks down, her expression shadowed. She quickly says it was never mind and tells Mary June not to follow her as she walks away. Alone, Violet reflects that she is well aware that Mary June doesn't know what she was talking about, which is why she is singing her praises. But the truth is that she once despised her enough to murder her. That evening at the banquet, Mary June watches other girls chatting with their friends and thinks about what to do about the banquet. The announcer calls for attention, stating that they will now hear from Crown Prince Claudia Acrusis, and Mary June thinks that Violet is probably still angry. She sighs to herself, thinking she did it again and upset Violet. Mary June clutches her dress, feeling dejected. On the grand staircase, Prince Claudia raises a glass of wine. He thanks everyone for taking the time to come to the Academy's summer retreat. He says that tonight they will enjoy a banquet and hopefully get to know one another better, even though approaching those of higher rank is normally frowned upon. But for this evening, he tells his guests to forget that, and to please mingle freely and enjoy the banquet. As the guests begin to socialize, Violet's old cronies approach Mary June and ask if she has seen Lady Violet, as they can't find her. Remembering Violet's words from earlier, Mary June says that she wanted solitude. The girls are disappointed but then get an idea, saying they were anxious to ask about her relationship with Prince Claudia. They tell a confused Mary June that they've been cheering her on for ages, ever since seeing her with the prince at the arts festival. They gossip excitedly about how the prince went to a second-year classroom before the recital and how Lady Violet herself stepped in when his cloak was ripped. They are certain the two are courting in secret, exclaiming how romantic it must be that they are seeing each other. As they squeal with delight, an older noblewoman passes by, telling them that while guests may be allowed to flout etiquette, their squealing is awful and beyond the pale. The woman looks on with disdain. Elsewhere, Lord Mila hands Claudia the guest list for the banquet, confirming that he knew Lady Violet wouldn't be there, as she is officially listed as ill and resting in her room. Violet stands alone on an outdoor balcony. She takes in the view, realizing the summer palace must be right on the coast, and thinks how lovely it is. Who would have guessed, she muses, that a simple garden stroll would lead to such a vista? She berates herself for her careless slip of the tongue earlier, saying she was shocked by Mary June's laughable claim of being proud of her, and a memory of her arrest flashes in her mind. She remembers struggling against the guards, shouting that it was all their fault. She recalls screaming at Mary June, accusing her of being greedy and taking everything, and wishing that she had never been born. The memory fills her with tears, and she thinks that this is all a sick joke. A voice calls her name, and she turns to see Prince Claudia standing at the entrance to the balcony. He asks if she is not feeling well. Startled, she quickly denies it, making an excuse that her chambers were warm and she just came out for some fresh air, wondering why he is here instead of at the banquet. He looks at her with concern, offering to have his servants help if she is unwell. The scene flashes back to Mila and Claudia, where Mila says he spotted Lady Violet strolling outside unaccompanied. Claudia asks where her sister and her usual companion are, and Mila explains that her sister is in the ballroom and that Yulan caught a cold. Mila tells Claudia he ought to go, as there is only one lady here he wishes to speak with, and that he will keep an eye on things at the banquet. The scene returns to the present, with Claudia still on the balcony. He explains that he desired a break as well, as he is a bit tired himself from arranging the banquet, and Violet thanks him for his efforts. Realizing she is likely in a pavilion reserved for royalty, she apologizes for loitering without permission and tries to leave, but he grabs her arm. He tells her to wait. He looks down at her, his expression unreadable. She is flustered, her heart pounding as she thinks about how this hand has never once touched her before. He tells her that he doesn't mind her being here. Or rather, he would prefer that she stayed. He asks if she would perhaps join him for a brief chat. His hand holds her wrist gently. She can feel his hand tremble ever so slightly as it grips her wrist. A pitcher of water and a cup sit on a nightstand next to a bed. In a well-appointed bedroom, a maid notes that it's rare for Lord Yulon to catch a cold, advising that a passion for studying is pointless if it harms one's body. Yulon lies in bed, a damp cloth on his forehead, as the maid tells him to call if he needs anything. As she departs, he thanks her weakly. Alone, Yulon coughs and crinkles the bedsheets, figuring he pushed himself too hard studying and feeling glad he didn't get Vio sick. He sweats with fever under the starry night sky visible through his window. He thinks about how hard he studied to get the top spot, only for Vio's younger sister to take second place among the first years on her very first test, wondering if she's a monster. A look of concern crosses his face as he wonders if Vio is alright. He rests his arm over his eyes. Meanwhile, on a gazebo balcony under the same night sky, a tense scene unfolds. Violet internally reflects on how she ended up staying here after the prince asked if they could talk for a little. She sits beside Prince Claudia in a profoundly awkward silence, certain that this exact situation has happened before in her past life. She glances at him, her expression strained, while he remains silent. Desperate to say something, she realizes they haven't spoken alone like this since their meeting in the student council salon, and she quickly agrees when he makes the same observation. He breaks the silence by commenting that the Cardino was quite good. Violet is shocked when he clarifies he means the tea she recommended, which he introduced to the guest salons where it received high ratings. He adds that he tried it himself and can certainly recommend it, though it's a shame they can't use it all year, leaving Violet stunned that he actually ordered and tasted it. He then tells her he's planned for it to be used in the academic building's salons soon and that she should go drink some. Overjoyed and flustered, she thanks him profusely. The prince smiles gently, observing that she really does look like she's having fun when the conversation turns to tea. His comment makes her blush intensely. She starts to apologize for her disgraceful excitement, but he tells her not to, stating that if she's happy, then he feels happy too. His words make her heart pound in her chest as he turns to look out at the garden. She clutches her dress, her heart refusing to calm down as the prince looks on with a soft smile. A breeze blows through the trees. Back in her room, Violet wonders if her chest was in turmoil because he was so different from the version in her memory, a version she had never seen smiling. She recalls that in her previous life, the prince's smile was always directed towards that other girl. Towards her, he was always cold. She remembers him complimenting Marijun's beauty while curtly telling Violet she was rude and that he had no business with her. She recalls his biting questions, asking if she was saying she was better than her younger sister. His face had radiated with disgust as he told her that no matter how beautifully she dressed, her expression was repulsive. The memory makes her increasingly irritated, and she thinks that Marijun and Prince Claudia had no intention of being together at the festival, being concerned only with her. Shaking off the irritation, she reminds herself that she can't dawdle, as she needs them to become a couple before she graduates to become a nun, and she calls out to him. Deciding to use the opportunity, she brings up the topic of tea again, mentioning that Marijun is also quite knowledgeable and has been studying it recently. The prince rejects her offer to call her sister for a recommendation, stating that if they have Cardina, there's no need for other teas. He then asks why she suddenly brought up her younger sister, noting that Marijun herself had said Violet was the knowledgeable one, which makes Violet wonder why Marijun hasn't been a topic of conversation at all. Awkwardly, Violet presses on, asking if he doesn't think Marijun is very cute. Realizing she was too direct, she quickly tries to praise her sister's dedication, but the prince simply stares at her. She then excitedly mentions that Marijun took second place in the recent exams, suggesting it was thanks to his guidance and that he should thank her by spending time alone with her. The prince listens silently before asking if it's possible that she is misunderstanding something. He apologizes if it sounds strange but then states bluntly that he has no personal interest in her younger sister. The revelation strikes Violet with stunning force. The prince takes a breath, trying to compose himself after his declaration. He clarifies that during their study session, he only tutored Mary June because Myra's explanations were too simple, and if he had to pick, he would rather. He trails off, blushing and unable to finish his sentence. Violet panics, thinking it's impossible that he doesn't even acknowledge her existence, while the prince whispers that he believes she is cuter. Just then, a bell chimes, signaling closing time, and Violet realizes this is an emergency. The prince notes that he has to give an address and tells her she should go back inside, which she quickly agrees to. As she leaves, he calls out her name. He wonders to himself if his feelings have been conveyed to her, even a little. Violet walks away, confused and questioning what feelings he could possibly mean. She concludes that he must be telling her not to bring up Mary June again because he isn't interested in her, relieved that the matter is settled. Elsewhere, Mary June wanders outside the spacious mansion grounds, wondering what she should do. She is spotted by someone in the distance. Relieved, she sees Lord Claudia and thinks she can finally return to the mansion. From her vantage point, she sees her big sister on a balcony and realizes Lord Claudia must have just been there with her. The image confirms her suspicions that the two of them must be in a secret relationship. With an inkling of an idea, she becomes sure that those two have been seeing each other in secret. Back inside, Violet staggers, feeling overwhelmed and unable to keep up with the recent events. She thinks about Mary June and Prince Claudia, who were originally from different social standings. In the past, they even got married, which is why Violet had made so many preparations this time, displaying Marijune's beauty and excellence at the art festival and study session. The prince's declaration that he has no personal interest makes her realize that in the past, he only looked at Mary June to tease her. The devastating truth dawns on her. The prince was never interested in Mary June at all, and everything she has done was for nothing. Her head hurts as she walks down a corridor, thinking of all the effort she put in, even teaching her the violin, to call attention to her. A woman's voice asks if she is perhaps unwell. The elegant lady offers to call for help if walking is a burden. Violet recognizes the lady with a start and stammers a negative reply. She dismisses the concern, claiming she is fine and just had something on her mind, which the lady accepts with a knowing giggle. Violet apologizes for worrying her, but the lady tells her not to pay it any mind. The lady wishes her a good day as she passes. Violet recognizes her as Lady Rosette Megan, the princess of the neighboring country Litos and an international student, just like Gia. Though she hasn't spoken to her much, she knows Rosette seems exactly as one would imagine, but Violet pushes the thought aside, panicked that her plan to become a nun will crumble at this rate. With a look of grim determination, she realizes she has to think of some other means to secure her future. Marin knocks on a bedroom door, announcing herself and wishing Lady Violet a good morning. She enters the room carrying a breakfast tray. Marin is surprised to find Lady Violet already awake and dressed, and apologizes for being late, but Violet assures her it's fine as she just woke up. Violet sits in a daze, her mind replaying the truth revealed at the blooming summer festival, that Prince Claudia had absolutely no interest in Mary June, a thought that kept her from sleeping. Her reverie is broken by the cheerful arrival of her sister, Mary June, who wishes her a good morning. Mary June asks if she may accompany her to the hall, and Violet, sensing her sister feels the same way about recent events, agrees. They walk past a window with lace curtains on their way to the dining hall. At breakfast with their father, Mary June happily recounts her fun at the festival, while Violet reasons that if the prince was only interested in Mary June when being bullied, the chance of them getting together now is exceedingly low. She concludes that while this means she loses the distraction she needed to quietly enter a monastery, her original plan was based on a future she already knew, so this change doesn't directly affect her. However, she realizes that at this rate, the world might become one where Prince Claudia and Mary June don't get married. The relationship between those two was the very matter that had changed her own life entirely. To invalidate their union would mean the future will undoubtedly change, leading to a different ending from her previous life, a rewind she herself initiated. Her father's voice cuts through her thoughts, asking if she is listening. He slams his hand on the table, annoyed that she is distracted while he is praising Mary for getting second place on her very first exam. He points out that Violet only placed fourth and tells her to learn from Mary, her superior younger sister, causing Violet to squeeze her fist under the table. With a stern look, he tells her that as a member of the Vahan family, she should be ashamed. He then casually sips his drink while Violet sits in stunned silence. Mary June stands up with a rattle of her chair, crying out, "Father!" while Violet can only manage a quiet apology. Mary June declares that he can't say something like that, explaining that she only got such a good grade thanks to studying with her big sister and everyone else. Violet looks at her younger sister, surprised by her defense. Mary June continues, saying that while their father may not know it, her sister's quiet dedication is a feat in itself, a rare admonishment that has little impact on their father. She then slams her hands on the table and declares with a bright smile that her big sister has fallen in love at first sight with Lord Claudia. The entire room is stunned into silence by her pronouncement. Violet demands to know what she is saying, and a flustered Mary June apologizes, explaining that she accidentally saw the two of them meeting at the festival. The accusation leaves Violet sweating and speechless. She frantically tries to process the situation, wondering if Mary June was nearby during her conversation with the prince, as Mary June excitedly proclaims that her big sister might be the future queen. Their parents are overjoyed by the news, with their mother calling it wonderful. Their father declares it a great honor that she adores the first prince, Lord Claudia. Violet feels trapped as her mother says they will support her, and Marin offers advice anytime, calling her Miss Violet. Her father tells her that doing this much for the family is expected and dismisses her, telling her to prepare for her next lesson. At school, Yulon finishes a class and considers inviting Vio to lunch. He is greeted by classmates who are glad he is over his cold and have brought him the lesson notes he missed. One of them congratulates him on placing first among the first years, expressing respect for his achievement, which Yulon dismisses as chance. A student then asks Yulon for help with an exam problem and invites him to lunch if he doesn't have other plans. Yulon agrees to go if his company is fine, thinking that since it's lunchtime, he and Vio will likely run into each other anyway. Elsewhere, Violet walks alone through the school grounds as other students whisper about her, wondering if she's alone and too nervous to call out to her. She notes that the academy has a lot of people no matter where one goes, and since the cafeteria was crowded, she got takeout instead. She feels like more and more people are looking at her. She wants to eat somewhere quiet and calm, away from all the eyes. In the distance, she spots a structure nestled among the trees. Pushing aside some branches, she finds a gazebo hidden in an overgrown area. She observes that the gazebo seems to be cleaned but the surrounding plants are not well maintained, leaving it completely hidden and without much sun. She steps inside and finds it refreshingly cool, the surrounding trees muffling the sounds of the academy. Deciding she has found a good spot, she resolves to eat her lunch there. She sits on the bench and begins eating a sandwich from a paper bag. As she eats, she thinks back to Marijun's declaration, believing her sister jumped to conclusions far too quickly just from seeing two people meeting. She puzzles over how Mary June could have come up with such a drastic misunderstanding. She hopes nothing more troublesome happens, reasoning that she barely meets the prince now, unlike in her past life when she visited the student council room daily. She then recalls her father's words, noting that he says horrible things as usual but that his expectation for her to do something for the family is a first in either of her lives. She reflects that since time rewound, everything is different from before. It was she who desired a different future, so she naturally doesn't regret the changes. The hidden gazebo feels slightly familiar, reminding her of another place. It resembles the silent, cold, dark space of her death, a place from which she returned with a profound desire to be loved. Resolved not to repeat her past, she is startled by a rustling sound from the bushes. A young woman holding a book steps out from the foliage. Violet is jolted with surprise, recognizing her as Lady Rosette. Lady Rosette looks up, her eyes wide and her expression flustered as she addresses Violet. She squeezes the book she's holding tightly in her arms. In the school cafeteria, Violet finishes her meal and wonders if she should order dessert as well. Yulon approaches her table, asking if she is done eating and informing her that he heard the day's recommendation is the fruit tart. Surprised, she asks how he knew she was finished, and he explains that he had asked the servers, who told him they had a large shipment of fresh fruit. She clarifies that she meant to ask how he knew she wanted dessert, and wonders with embarrassment if she really looked that hungry. Violet looks at a flustered Lady Rosette, who questions if she is who she thinks she is. Rosette averts her gaze, wondering why Violet is here in this secluded place. Believing she is a bother, Rosette apologizes and tries to brush past Violet to leave immediately, but Violet calls out to stop her. Rosette trips as she turns to leave, sending something falling to the ground with a thud. An open book lies on the ground, which catches Violet's eye. Looking closer, she sees pictures of lizards inside. She picks up the book, smacking the dust off it, and sees it's packed with descriptions of anatomy and ecology. She quickly realizes it's a reference book on reptiles. Violet looks up at Rosette, who apologizes profusely. Rosette becomes extremely flustered, trying to explain that it's not what Violet thinks. She continues to stammer, unable to form a coherent sentence. Violet calmly holds out the book to her. Rosette is surprised when Violet tells her she doesn't have to force herself to explain. Violet adds that she didn't ask anything and won't tell anyone before turning to leave, but Rosette asks her to wait. Rosette asks in disbelief if Violet isn't disillusioned with her. She clarifies that she was carrying a very unusual book. Violet simply agrees with a small smile. She admits that she was a little surprised, but nothing more. She tells Rosette that she is free to choose whatever interests her. She does, however, advise Rosette to be mindful of the place and people when indulging her interest, as some will really hate it. With a final, good day, Violet departs, leaving a stunned Rosette behind. As she walks away, Violet's heart pounds from the surprising encounter in such a remote area, figuring Rosette was also seeking solitude. She recalls Rosette's shocked question about whether she was disillusioned. Violet reflects that since she was often forced to read reference books, she wasn't repulsed by the reptile book, though she thinks it might have been more natural to act surprised. She has no hobby of exposing people's secrets and, having no connection to Rosette, worries she might have unnecessarily alarmed her when she is called from behind. She turns to see Yulan approaching. He's glad he found her and asks what's wrong, but she deflects, asking if he came to invite her to lunch, which she has already finished. Yulan says he also finished his lunch and was planning to do something after school, but decided to find her now in case he missed her later. He stands before her, looking serious. He admits with a blush that he hasn't seen her in a while and just wanted to see her face. Violet explains that she's been bedridden with a cold, and Yulan looks embarrassed, saying it's not really something he needed to do. She continues, saying she couldn't go with him to the blooming summer festival because of it. At this, she gives a small chuckle. She smiles and tells Yulan that she, too, wanted to see him. Yulan beams, asking if she really means it, and Violet notes how strange it is that her depressing feelings from the morning vanished the moment she saw his face. She mentions that he must have worked hard for the test to get sick, then congratulates him on getting first place, which surprises him since scores are only shown to those in the same grade. Flustered, Violet wonders if it would sound strange to say she heard about his rank from Mary June, but Yulan interrupts, asking her to look at him for a moment. He leans in close, causing her to blush. She starts to protest as he gets closer. He points out that she has dark circles under her eyes. Shocked, she asks if they are that noticeable, insisting she's fine, but her heart races as Yulan asks if she didn't sleep well last night. As they walk together, Yulan asks if something happened at the blooming summer festival. His gaze is sharp as he mentions something involving her younger sister and that guy. Violet is taken aback, unable to deny that something happened. She decides to tell him everything, explaining that Prince Claudia has no interest in Mary June, that Mary June has a troublesome impression of her and the prince, and that all of this is happening even though she just wants to become a nun. After listening, she tries to dismiss his concern, saying she just had difficulty sleeping, but inwardly admits she can't say it so easily. She knows she can't actually tell him the full story, but a bell chimes in the distance. Yulan notes that lunchtime is over and says they should go back to class. Violet watches him, a troubled look on her face. She resolves to be more careful, realizing she carelessly made Yulan worry, while Prince Claudia's words, "I think you're cute," echo in her mind. Elsewhere, Prince Claudia's aide asks if that was all he told her at the festival, but the prince protests that he can't suddenly say, "I like you." The prince sighs, admitting Violet can't give a reply to that, even though his aide presented an opportunity for them. The aide bluntly states that normally, people would just say, "I like you," in that situation, causing the prince to blush fiercely. The prince clenches his fist, insisting that Yulan has nothing to do with his hesitation. His aide notes that His Highness is certainly honest, remarking that up until now, Violet had always directed her affection towards him, but the reason she no longer does is unknown. The aide understands the sentiment, noting that they are already third years with little time left, and the royal family hosts the festival every year for this very reason. He then drops a stack of papers on the desk with a thud, telling the prince to get to it. He presents a list of likely candidates for his queen, selected from the participants of the festival, telling him to look through them when he has time. The aide informs him that he will be taking interviews in the near future and that he should plan ahead. The prince picks up the stack of documents. On the top page, the name Rosette Megan is clearly visible. A horse-drawn carriage waits as a character swears they won't be a bother. Several days have passed since Marijan's baffling misunderstanding where she declared her big sister had fallen in love at first sight with Lord Claudia. Violet reflects that, frankly, her days have become somewhat peaceful since then. She hates to admit it, but her father's bothersome mockery, which once permeated every second of her life, has suddenly stopped. However, this new peace is interrupted by the strange behavior of others around her. Students now greet Lady Violet with a nervous formality. When she questions them, they react with alarm and insist that it's nothing. In turn, she feels that everyone else has become somewhat weird. A maid informs Lady Violet that a guest has arrived for her, a development Violet finds puzzling as she notes the different way people are looking at her now. The guest is a smiling young woman. She greets Violet warmly. The two walk toward the gazebo as the guest asks Violet if she has some time to spare. At the gazebo, the guest, Lady Rosette, thanks Violet very much for not telling anyone about the book she dropped the other day. Rosette confesses that she was prepared for rumors to spread the next day, while Violet admits she had completely forgotten about the incident. Rosette explains she has prepared a small token of her appreciation and asks Violet to accept it if it is to her liking. She presents a box containing a beautiful brooch made with a purple jewel, the famous Ledo's gem, from her country. Rosette believes the shining jewel suits a gorgeous and refined lady like Violet, which shocks her. Rosette proudly states she has chosen a jewel befitting of Lady Violet, but Violet recalls that the Ledo's gem is a national treasure so exquisite it cannot be exported. Remembering that a single gem is said to be valuable enough to buy a small country, Violet tells a confused Lady Rosette that while she is grateful, she cannot accept it. Rosette's eyes widen in surprise. She becomes troubled, wondering if the gift is not to Violet's liking and questioning if it's the design or quality, which she insists is the highest in her country. Violet notices that Rosette is trembling. Rosette clenches her fists, wondering what she should do. It dawns on Rosette that she has been under a terribly wrong impression and that this gift might be seen as an attempt to keep Violet quiet. Violet looks at the magnificent jewel, realizing this wasn't a token of appreciation. It was a bribe for her silence. She understands Rosette's reasoning immediately, considering the power struggles of the aristocratic world where it's easier to lower others' standing by spreading unflattering rumors than to raise one's own. Rosette had a hobby that many would despise, and for an object of adoration like her, exposing that fact would be the same as killing her reputation. A bright, abstract light fills the frame. Violet stands before Rosette, holding the box. She tells Lady Rosette that she would be the one most affected by such rumors. In a bonus panel, Rosette confesses that she is actually extremely fond of sweets. Rosette explains that the sweeter the food, the more she enjoys it, and she wouldn't mind if all the muffins and chocolate she is served were cakes instead. She admits her tastes don't match her appearance and that she is terrible with bitter things, forcing herself to drink black coffee to avoid disappointing others. The confession makes her worry that Violet is now disillusioned with her. Rosette insists that she doesn't care if Violet spreads rumors, but she wanted to tell her this truth regardless. Violet is surprised by this sudden turn. Rosette offers a deal. If Violet agrees to keep her love for sweets a secret, she will keep quiet about Violet in return. Violet smiles, touched by the offer, and asks how that sounds. Rosette recalls Violet's earlier words, "You're free to choose whatever interests you." Violet reflects that those words were what her past self, who was desperate to meet expectations, had wanted someone to tell her. Rosette, feeling a sense of kinship, understands and agrees, saying she would like to retry their friendship another day. She promises to prepare something more befitting for Violet next time. She then asks how Violet would like some delicious baked goods from her house. Violet accepts with a smile, saying she looks forward to it, and afterward, the two begin to meet and chat occasionally. One day, a maid comes to find Lady Violet. Another student informs her that she reserved a seat for them in the salon since it is slightly chilly outside, which Violet appreciates. Yulon watches from a distance as Lady Violet and Lady Rosette converse, thinking how lovely the scene is. He thinks to himself that they are like a flower garden of roses and lilies. His thoughts are interrupted by another student, Gia, who asks what he is doing, explaining that the princess is just eating lunch with her friend. Gia notes that this explains why she's not around whenever Yulon goes to ask her out, calling it too bad. Yulon questions the word friends, and Gia seems surprised, stating that Vio never had friends before. Gia tells Yulon that no matter how smitten he is, that's a pretty harsh thing to say about those around Vio. Yulon clarifies that there was never anyone he would consider a friend among her circle. The bejeweled pin in Violet's hair glints in the light. In the salon, Violet asks if Lady Rosette can drink her tea straight. Rosette explains that while she doesn't dislike sweet things, she prefers bitter food and wants to feel refreshed after a meal, which Violet finds amazing. Violet laments that while she likes light-colored dresses, they don't suit her like they do Lady Rosette, who in turn says she can't believe the amount of desserts Violet has. Rosette thought they were similar but realizes their preferences are the complete opposite, adding that she adores the bright dresses Violet wears. Violet smiles and jokes that they should switch bodies. Rosette's eyes widen at the suggestion. Violet agrees it's a fine idea, remarking how strange and wonderful it is to be able to speak with Lady Rosette like this. Rosette giggles, admitting she has hardly ever talked so freely with anyone at the academy besides her childhood friend, who is a grade below her. Violet is surprised, asking if Rosette doesn't talk to Lord Claudia in this manner. Rosette asks why she would, wondering if Violet doesn't encounter him often. She then mentions hearing a rumor that the two of them even had a secret meeting at the Blooming Summer Festival. Violet quickly denies it, explaining she just happened to meet him and they chatted for a bit, realizing with dismay that Mary June must have blathered about the misunderstanding. Rosette finds this strange, as people were talking about her being a candidate to become his consort and that they would soon be engaged, a rumor Violet realizes is the reason for the strange atmosphere recently. Violet is shocked at the thought of being engaged to him, admitting that while she pushed her way into the student council office in the past, a lot has changed. She clarifies that she no longer feels the same, and moreover, she doesn't believe His Highness feels anything for her as a person. Rosette says she understands. She then looks at Violet and asks if she can please relinquish Lord Claudia to her. Violet is left completely stunned by the unexpected request. Violet confronts Rosette, asking what she means by her request to relinquish Lord Claudia to her. Rosette looks on with a calm, knowing expression. She explains that since Lady Violet shows no interest in being the queen, she should have no objections to Rosette approaching His Highness. Violet asks Lady Rosette directly if she holds affection for Lord Claudia. Rosette looks at her intently, considering the question. She turns the question back on Violet, asking what she would do if the answer was yes. Violet gets up from her seat and steps toward Rosette. She stands directly in front of the seated princess. Violet looks down at her and says that she sees, and that's how it is. She raises her hands in a gesture of excitement. Taking Rosette's hands, she exclaims that if it's true, then this is wonderful news. The sparkling reaction surprises Violet, who thinks she didn't expect Rosette to be interested in the prince. Rosette is taken aback as Violet declares this is good news and says she will of course cheer for her, as the country will surely prosper if Rosette becomes queen. Violet reflects that with the position of fiancée vacant now that she isn't bullying Mary June, rumors have started about her, likely originating from the attention given by Lord Claudia and Lord Mira. Since Lord Claudia has no romantic gossip, the royal family is likely worried about choosing a queen, but if a princess from a neighboring country like Rosette is chosen, even Violet's father would have to accept it. She sees Lady Rosette as a savior and a godsend, offering to help in any way she can. Rosette chuckles, remarking that she is surprised and didn't expect Violet's support. She explains that the rumors about Violet paint her as someone who uses her beauty as a weapon, flaunts her power, and terrorizes people with a poisonous tongue. Rosette admits that she surely thought Violet would pour red tea on her for such a request. Yet in reality, Violet was the contrary, taking great pains to refuse an advantageous deal, and even sharing a secret to reassure her. Rosette had wondered if Violet's kindness was all a scheme. She apologizes for testing Violet, explaining that she mentioned His Highness's name to probe her heart, but the more they talked, the more she wondered why Violet had such a negative image. Violet gasps, realizing that what Rosette just said about Lord Claudia was a joke. Rosette confirms that while she thinks he is a wonderful gentleman, she does not feel for him as she claimed. She clarifies that her father and country do, however, have expectations for her to marry His Highness. A flashback shows an invitation to study abroad arriving from the Duralia kingdom. Rosette explains that while the Lithos kingdom looks glamorous, it is a small country without much military power. Though her brother's efforts have maintained their neutrality as a merchant country, they could be threatened at any time, making an alliance necessary, and this invitation is a unique opportunity. Her father told her that the Prince of Duralia would surely fancy her. Her brothers, however, urged her not to force herself or sacrifice herself for a political connection. Rosette reassured her crying brothers that she doesn't think of herself as a sacrifice and is merely a candidate with no guarantee of being chosen. She declared her intention to accept the invitation, stating that if Lord Claudia chooses her, it would be a great honor, as no one else longs for her hand in marriage. Back in the present, she tells Violet that since she was born into the royal family, she has always been prepared for such a situation. Violet apologizes for cheering her on without knowing her true circumstances, but Rosette says not to worry. Rosette explains that if she had to marry foreign royalty, Lord Claudia is the least awful option of them all. She reveals she's been secretly searching the rear garden for rare reptiles said to live in Duralia, and she is sure she will be able to meet them if things go smoothly. She admits frankly that things like marriage and being a queen candidate are actually quite troublesome. Violet is surprised, remarking that even Lady Rosette thinks that way. Rosette asks if Lady Violet thinks differently. She points out that Violet was the one who encouraged her to like whatever she wants, and she felt then that perhaps Lady Violet was the same as her. Violet replies that she thinks every person has a side they cannot reveal to anyone, because perfection is very tiring. Rosette agrees, admitting that she, too, has a side she cannot reveal to people. A flashback shows Violet attempting to kill her sister, Mary June. Violet thinks of the ugly, dirty part of herself, a darkness inside that she can't show anyone. Later, Rosette comments on how delicious Lady Violet's favorite tea was. Violet suggests they have tea at the gazebo next time, and Rosette mentions she also has something to show her. She has her own reptile compendium. Violet is delighted at the chance to learn from Rosette's book, though she notes hers isn't as detailed. Their conversation is interrupted by another student who says someone is waiting for Lady Rosette in the classroom. Rosette thanks the student for letting her know. As she leaves, she bids Violet farewell, and the other students marvel at the princess's amazing change in demeanor. Violet muses on the side of a person that they don't want to reveal. She browses the shelves in the library. Suddenly, Yulon is behind her, startling her and asking if she is all right. He notes that she seems out of sorts. She denies being tired, explaining she's just been thinking about something. Yulon assumes she is looking for references for her difficult history assignment, a task he also had to do as a first year. He then asks if she was thinking about Lady Rosette. He explains that he happened to see them together during lunch, something he has never seen before. Violet realizes she hasn't told him about her new friendship and explains she's had the chance to talk with Rosette a few times lately. She then turns to Yulon and asks him if he has things he can never say to anyone, or a side of himself he can never reveal. Yulon looks at her, his eyes full of emotion. She quickly backtracks, saying there was no deeper meaning and that she was just discussing it with Lady Rosette. Yulon points out that they have been together since they were young. He continues that they should know everything about each other, but trails off as Violet stands silently. She apologizes for asking something so weird and tells him to forget it. He embraces her from behind, telling her that there isn't anything he has to hide from Vio. He adds that if there is something she doesn't know about him, it is only because she has yet to notice it. Her heart pounds in her chest as she stands speechless in his arms. Yulon releases her, explaining that, for example, he has to bend his neck far down to look at her now, whereas she used to be the taller one when they were young. Violet realizes with a jolt that while Yulon has always hugged her playfully, his physique and height have changed drastically, a fact she should have noticed. Her heart thumps as she grasps the new feeling that Yulon is now a man too. She chides herself for having perverted thoughts as Yulon asks what about her, if there is anything she can't tell him. She panics, thinking she can't just tell him she's a time traveler as he would worry about her sanity, and she has no way to prove it anyway. A memory of her past self in a prison cell flashes through her mind. She thinks that she is someone who has returned from 1 year in the future and is currently reliving the past, but Yulon looks on with concern. She clenches her fist, believing that if she says it earnestly, Yulon will believe her and not laugh. If it's Yulon, she can tell him all of it. She looks at him and says that if it's him, she wants to tell him everything. He smiles brightly, happy to hear that, but she looks down, apologizing and saying that because she trusts him from the bottom of her heart, she doesn't want to show him her ugly side. With tears in her eyes, she thinks that she especially doesn't want him to see it. A narrator always remembers the same scene. A frightened face staring up at them while the deafening sound of rain echoes in a deathly silent room. The memory is of a girl with wide, terrified eyes. Reflected in those eyes was the narrator, looking like a crazed beast. Violet jumps awake in her bed. She pants, recovering from the nightmare. The room is quiet and still. Clutching the sheets, she realizes she saw that dream again. She tells herself it's okay, as nothing that drastic has happened in this world. Still, She knows the memory is not something that disappears so easily. On a sunny day, Lady Rosette excitedly points out something to Lady Vio. A small lizard is sunbathing in the grass, and Rosette explains that these little creatures often come out on sunny days, which Violet finds cute. Rosette explains that this is another secluded spot few know of, full of wildlife because of the trees planted by Tanzanite Academy, and she wonders what species the lizard is. As she suggests they slowly get a closer look, the lizard rustles in the grass and swiftly darts away, startling them both. It runs away very fast, and Rosette remarks that the way it fled was rather adorable. Violet asks if Rosette has ever touched one, and Rosette confirms that she has held less timid ones in her hand before, which wows Violet. Rosette apologizes for getting lost in her excitement and for bringing Violet to such a place, but Violet insists she is fine and tells her not to worry. Rosette notices leaves in Violet's hair and points them out, but Violet brushes them off, saying that if getting a little dirty means spending a pleasant time with her, then she has gotten a lot out of the experience. The comment makes Rosette blush, thinking to herself that Lady Vio is unaware of her own charm, which is bad for her heart. Violet changes the subject, recalling that Rosette mentioned she liked bitter things. She mentions a cafe she frequents that recently released a new dessert with bitter chocolate and citrus fruits, inviting Rosette to go with her after school. Rosette says she would love to go but apologizes, explaining that she has an arranged meeting after school that day. Violet understands that the arranged meeting is a tea party between the fiancé candidates and the prince. This meeting is the last chance for people to approach the prince before the royal family's engagement ceremony, which is customarily held at the end of the ball. Last time, Mary June was the only one from her family invited. This time, however, Violet has also received an invitation, a fact she never would have imagined in the past, and Rosette asks when her meeting is. Violet admits she's not that interested and has been avoiding it by giving Lord Mira random excuses, but he is quite insistent. Rosette asks if she is going to decline, and Violet confirms that she is, as it's just a meeting hosted by the student council and not mandatory. Rosette finds this odd, pointing out that when they last spoke, Violet said she no longer had feelings for him, but she knew Violet used to be obsessed with him. She asks directly if something happened between her and Lord Claudia. Her heart pounds as Rosette speculates wildly, asking if he treated her terribly or if he is a violent man who cheated on her, but Violet quickly denies it. Violet explains that she is just avoiding him for her own reasons, and Rosette apologizes for asking something so personal. Violet then asks Rosette to imagine that she had committed a terrible crime, but then it was as if nothing ever happened. She looks at Lady Rosette with a heavy expression. She asks what Rosette would do in that situation, telling her to feel free to ignore the odd question. Rosette looks back, confused by the mention of a crime. The school bell rings in the distance. Violet apologizes and tells Rosette not to pay her strange question any mind as they should return to class. Later, at the arranged meeting, Rosette thanks the prince for inviting her. She formally introduces herself as Rosette Megan from the Lithos Kingdom and says she is honored to make his acquaintance. She finds Crown Prince Claudia's behavior odd, as he remains silent and seems completely uninterested in being there. She tries to make conversation, mentioning that her brother told her the trade negotiations with the Duralia Kingdom have been going well and that she is certain they can build a wonderful political connection. The prince suddenly speaks, surprising her by asking if the tea is from Cardina. He correctly identifies the rather unknown tea leaves, and when Rosette asks how he knew, he says he learned about it at the salon from Lady Violet. Rosette's ear twitches at the mention of her name. She realizes he accidentally said her name, but also that her choosing the same tea served at the salon makes sense to him. The prince continues to talk at length, explaining that he was blown away by Violet's vast knowledge on the matter when he was struggling to find a replacement tea. Flustered, Rosette says never mind when he asks for her name again, noting how quickly he spoke when the topic turned to Violet. He then asks if she is perhaps close to Violet, and Rosette explains that while they haven't known each other long, they have lunch together when schedules permit, and she feels Lady Vio is a kind and warm-hearted person. The prince's face sparkles as he exclaims that she understands Violet very well. He seems embarrassed, admitting he is now filled with guilt for previously viewing her from a biased perspective even though he barely knew her. Rosette looks at the prince with wide-eyed curiosity, wanting to know more about her, and asks if he would mind telling her. Rosette recounts Lady Vio's claim that the prince isn't interested in her, calling it an awful misunderstanding. Rosette observes Prince Claudia's expression as his heart thumps, concluding that he is clearly infatuated with Violet. She can't imagine what happened between them but sees that at the very least, Lady Vio is incredibly dear to the prince, and wonders if his feelings are unrequited. Rosette sighs, realizing there's nothing she can do if Claudia is already besotted with another, and it now makes sense why he didn't care about their conversation. Still, she admits to herself that the prince has a good eye for settling on Lady Vio. She concludes that under the circumstances, she has no reason to remain in Duralia. As she prepares to be sent home, the prince asks if she knows anything that Violet likes, as he wants to thank her for recommending a wonderful tea for the lounge. He asks Rosette to tell him what she's learned, what they usually discuss, and anything else she might know about Violet. Rosette addresses Prince Claudia, apologizing sincerely but stating that she cannot answer his questions. She explains that her precious times with Lady Vio, what they talk about, what they think about, and how they've grown closer, belong only to them. Those are not things she wishes to divulge to others. Prince Claudia's eyes widen in surprise at her refusal. Rosette internally fumes, thinking it's boorish of him to pry and unbelievably rude to discuss another woman during their social appointment, but says she's not obliged to help him if Vio doesn't want to marry him. The prince tells her to forget his questions, explaining that Violet seems to be avoiding him lately. He recalls that at one point she hounded him, however often he rebuffed her, but now things have changed. Rosette is surprised, saying she didn't expect him to say that, as she'd always pictured him as a resolute, decisive, and calm man, never so dejected. Now knowing she doesn't need to flatter him, Rosette decides to tease him a bit, smugly saying she can't imagine how he must feel since Lady Vio is always personally inviting her to lunch. The prince becomes visibly agitated, arguing that Violet mended his cloak herself and once said the time they spent studying together was precious to her, a comment Rosette jolts at. His aide enters, announcing that the appointment is almost finished, which makes both of them groan in frustration. A knock at the door startles them, and Rosette apologizes, saying she is fine. The prince laments that he got carried away rambling and that this was a fool's errand. He dismisses Rosette, telling her she may go unless she has something to ask him. Rosette says she does have one question, asking if he has any idea why things change between him and Lady Vio. The prince glares, asking if she is suggesting he did something indecent, but Rosette assures him she didn't say that. He says he isn't sure why she began to avoid him but imagines it's related to the death of her mother about a year ago. He explains that Violet's family situation was complicated. Though her father is alive, he didn't reside with them, and she lived alone with her mother since childhood. A flashback shows a younger Violet with her mother. The prince relates a story from his aide, who said it seems likely that getting back on her feet after losing the parent who always nurtured her has been a daunting task. Rosette considers this, thinking it makes sense that such a tragedy would affect her behavior, but she doubts it's the real reason as Violet doesn't seem mired in sadness. She concludes that, rather, Violet seems tormented. Her aide's final observation was that Violet seems to be forcing herself to do something. The scene shows the exterior of a grand building. In a classroom, Gia calls out to Yulon. He hands Yulon a small box, saying he brought his request, and Yulon thanks him for the hassle. Gia says Yulon threw him for a loop, as he was shocked Yulon asked him to make something from the same amber as the princess's hairpin, and Yulon is surprised Gia knew the superstition from Sina. Gia recounts the story his grandpa told him as a kid about the wedding of their first king and queen, who split a piece of amber from Sina and fashioned the halves into matching accessories. The superstition states that if a lover accepts the gift and both safeguard the objects, then in their last moments, their wishes will be granted, a fairy tale Gia never thought Yulon would believe. Yulon quietly murmurs that it's true as he looks at a watch. Gia asks what he said, but Yulon deflects, saying it was nothing and that he'll bring a thank you gift next time. Gia is incredulous, asking why he won't wear the watch he had made for him since Yulon had said he didn't own one. The custom-made watch has a beautiful floral design on its face, and Yulon says he would have worn it. But a memory of Violet giving him a gift flashes in his mind. He explains with a gentle expression that he has a new watch he intends to use for the rest of his life. Gia looks at him with rabbit-themed wallpaper in the background as Yulon announces he is heading out to find Vio. Gia smirks, telling Yulon that someone is asking for him, but Yulon tells him to can it. A young woman waits in the doorway for Yulon. It is Mary June, who greets him with an ah. Yulon is surprised to see her there, and she waves cheerfully. Yulon recognizes her as Miss Vio's sister. He grins and asks if he can give her a hand with something. Mary June apologizes for the impromptu visit, asking if he's busy talking to a friend, but Yulon says it's fine and asks what she wanted. She explains that she has been marveling over how scholarly he is, as he was top of the class in their last exams. She beams and asks if they could study together. Yulan thinks crap, as Mary June explains how much their study group helped her. She says that since they are in the same year, studying together might help them both, as she didn't realize how fun studying with others could be. She explains she couldn't impose on the student council again and thought of asking her sister, but that's a headache. Yulan tells her to let him mull it over, thinking that if he turns her down, Vio will be upset, and Mary June is thrilled he'll consider it. He points out that the next exams are far off and the ball is soon, suggesting she should focus on preparing for social appointments like the other girls. Mary June smiles and tells him not to worry, because the only Vahan invited to a social appointment was her dear sister Violet. Yulan's eyes widen as he questions if it was only Violet. A flashback shows him asking Mary June if she, not Vio, was the one invited. Mary June had dismissed the idea, saying she only recently transferred and that Yulan would surely be happy for Vio. She had expressed her certainty that he would think the prince will propose to Violet. With tears in her eyes, she had declared that she was sure Prince Claudia would cherish her dear sister. Yulan's expression darkens in the memory. As Mary June leaves, telling him she'll follow up next time, Yulan clenches his fist. He grits his teeth, vowing that he will never make the same mistake again. He feels a sense of urgency, thinking that what happened is ridiculous and that he won't forget. He resolves never to forget the day they hung her out to dry. He lets out a frustrated groan. In the school cafeteria, Violet finishes her meal and decides she will get some dessert, too. Yulan approaches her table, asking if she is done with lunch and informing her that he heard the day's recommendation is the delicious fruit tarts. Surprised, she asks how he knew, and he explains that he had asked the servers about the dessert, who told him they had a large shipment of fresh fruit. She clarifies that she was asking how he knew that she wanted to order dessert, and wonders with embarrassment if she comes off as that greedy. In the student council room, Prince Claudia asks Mila what happened to his glasses. Mila explains that he dropped and cracked them this morning, but when Claudia asks if he can work without them, he insists he can. He glares intently at the documents in his hand, determined to sort them. His intense stare makes Claudia flustered, who tells him there's no need to glare, but Mila explains he is nearsighted and it's hard for him to see from a distance, so he wasn't mocking him. On a balcony at night, a princess is addressed as Your Highness. A servant apologizes for disturbing her just before bedtime. He informs her that a letter has arrived from His Majesty, the King of Lithos. The servant explains that it seems the king wishes her to return. The timeline for her return is after next month's engagement ceremony. Holding the letter, Rosette thinks that her father has already arranged for her to meet another prince, and she wishes he would wait until she graduates. The scene shifts to Marin asking a distracted Lady Violet if her hair hurts, calling it a shame. Violet reassures her that it's fine. She thanks Marin, telling her that she has made her hair look lovely. Marin explains that since Violet wished to wear the special hairpin, she wanted to put it in an eye-catching style, even though the usual way would have been fine. Violet touches the hairpin, smiling as she remembers that Yulan gave it to her. She compliments Marin, who amazes her by breathing life into her frizzy hair, and Marin proudly states that she pulled out all the stops today. Marin tells her lady that it's almost time for school, but Violet simply stares at her. Violet wonders why Marin, who is so good at arranging hair, never changes her own hairstyle and suggests she grow it out. Marin explains that long hair would get in the way of her work and that while she enjoys tending to Violet's hair, she doesn't wish to bother with her own, though she is happy to do this for her lady. Violet considers her words. Marin looks at her fondly, continuing that having the chance to arrange Violet's long hair is blissful. A memory surfaces of a man telling a younger Marin that her hair is getting long and should be cut, just like his. The memory is of her admiring a handsome man, and in the present, she tells Violet that it's blissful for her, too. A quiet moment passes between them. At school, a fellow student asks Violet why Princess Rosette didn't attend that day. Another student explains that something came up out of nowhere but she'll be back tomorrow, offering to notify Violet when she returns, but Violet says there is no need. Violet thinks it's too bad, as she brought her field guide from home to learn about the reptiles Rosette likes and also wanted to show off her new hairstyle. While walking in the hall, she bumps into Yulan, who calls out her name. Startled, she exclaims his name. Yulan compliments her, noting her hair looks different and that she looks very pretty. He notices the hairpin in her hair. He asks if that is the hairpin he gave her, causing Violet to blush. She awkwardly explains that while he gave it to her ages ago, She was always too busy to try a hairstyle that showed it off, though she always wanted to wear it. Yulan becomes flustered, asking her to look away, and Violet is surprised that he is blushing more than she is. He insists he isn't laughing at her, explaining that it's just that she is rarely bashful. He tells her to stop staring and that she is being cute, explaining that he is just really happy and afraid his face looks odd. She asks if he is free for tea after school, but he apologizes, saying he's busy today. He profusely apologizes and promises to join her next time, while Violet tells him it's alright. After he rushes off, she finds it odd that everyone seems to be busy. Alone after class, she reflects that it's been ages since she spent time by herself, having met up with Princess Rosette every day lately. She decides to use her field guide, remembering Rosette telling her about a rare reptile the Academy gardener had seen on campus. She looks through the guide, finding a description of a lizard with hard scales and a thorny tail like a dragon, and concludes it must be the one. Believing the unique-looking creature might be easy to find, she sets off to search. After a while, however, she is empty-handed, realizing it's not so easy, especially since Rosette had also looked for it. Alone in the large garden, she almost forgets that Rosette is a busy princess from another country. She has a sudden realization that she's been spending time with someone super popular and important, a chance she wouldn't normally have. She panics, realizing she's broken her own cardinal rules to keep away from others and not attract attention, and resolves that she should stop spending time with Rosette to stay on track with her goal of becoming a nun. She understands that once she graduates and abandons her noble rank, people like Princess Rosette, Yulan, and Marin will move in circles beyond her reach. Before she traveled back in time, she never recognized that there were still people who cared for her even without her putting up a front. She berates herself for being foolish and letting herself get friendly with people, knowing that creating deep bonds means she has more to lose. A sudden clatter from the bushes startles her. She spots the lizard Rosette was looking for and gives chase, telling it not to go. The chase continues across the school grounds. She follows the lizard as it slips into a nest-like hole, realizing this must be why it's so hard to spot. Pleased that she found one, she makes a mental note of the location, which is quite a distance from the main garden. Something brushes against her hair. She touches her head and realizes with a jolt of panic that her hairpin is missing. A memory flashes of Yulan blushing as he asked if that was the hairpin he gave her. The rustling of trees in the garden is the only sound for a long moment. A feeling of gloom settles over Violet as she realizes she cannot find her lost hairpin. She rechecks the entire path she ran down, sweating with effort and anxiety, thinking the speed of her chase might have caused it to fly off. Feeling like she is looking for a needle in a haystack, she thinks of how happy Marin and Yulan were to see her wear it, but as she resolves to look one more time, a voice calls out her name. Her head whips around in surprise. It is Mary June, who smiles brightly and says she thought she saw her, asking if she is out for a stroll. Mary June explains she was studying in the library when she glanced out the window and saw Vio walking alone, so she came all the way down to say hello. Vio internally rejects the idea of studying with her, recalling that Mary June was actually going to invite Yulan, but he was already gone from his classroom. Remembering their earlier study agreement, Marijune's face falls slightly as she asks Vio if she would like to join her instead. Vio processes this, realizing Yulan had promised to meet Mary June one-on-one. Mary June confirms she must have just missed him and laments her terrible timing. Her sister calls her name, Violet, snapping her out of her thoughts. Vio is startled back to the present, stammering that Mary June had just invited her to study. She quickly declines, saying she is busy but will join her next time, the lie making her heart sink for a second. Mary June looks at her with curiosity. Her sister's concern is immediate as she asks what Vio is busy with and if something is going on. Vio tries to deflect, but Marijune's innocent persistence makes her notice the serene garden around them for the first time. Mary June smiles, saying she can see why Vio likes it out here. Vio finds her sister so nosy that she winds up telling her everything, something she never dreamed she would do. It feels wrong to rely on her, but Vio admits to herself that she cannot search the entire garden alone and Marijune's eyes seem sharper, so she might as well put her to work. She calls out to Mary June to wait, but her sister has already wandered off, causing Vio to ask where she is going since she wasn't over there. Mary June declares that she knows a shiny hairpin might have been stolen by birds, a theory that makes Vio instantly regret asking for help. As the sky darkens, Vio knows it will soon be impossible to find anything. A look of weary resignation crosses her face. She stands on the dirt path under a sky full of birds returning to their nests. Mary June calls out, asking if she spotted it, and Vio simply replies, no. Vio tells Mary June that night is falling and she ought to head home, but her sister points out they haven't found the hairpin and asks if Vio will keep searching. A pained expression crosses Vio's face as she considers her next move. She tells Mary June that since she wants to search a bit longer, she is not sure she will be home for dinner, and asks a favor. She asks if Mary June could go home ahead of her and give their father an excuse for her lateness. Mary June agrees instantly, thrilled that Violet has asked for her help, and runs off as Vio watches with relief. Alone once more, Vio thinks about how she left no stone unturned, yet still has not found it, and she recalls her promise to Yulon to treasure the hairpin. She wonders how he would react if she told him she lost it. She is sure he wouldn't be angry, but he would look absolutely heartbroken. A bird flapping its wings nearby catches her attention. She looks up and sees a bird's nest high in the branches of a tree. Recalling Mary June's ridiculous theory, she gasps, wondering if there is any way it could be true. Her eyes widen as she spots the unmistakable glitter of her amber hairpin woven into the twigs of the nest. She steels her resolve, determined to retrieve it. But her determination turns to disbelief as she sees Prince Claudia standing nearby. A guard is explaining to him that a young lady, Mary June, asked him to look for something she lost, but he can't leave his post, just as Claudia sees Vio and asks what's going on. Mary June calls out to Prince Claudia, relieved to see him. The prince tells Mary June that the guard is stationed there and cannot leave, advising her that she can let the school office know what's missing tomorrow, but Mary June insists her sister is still looking. He turns his gaze toward Vio with a questioning look. His eyes follow her gaze up into the tree branches where the nest sits. Vio knows the hairpin looks secure and is unlikely to fall on its own, and she has no tools to get it down, but she cannot give up now that she's finally found it. She decides that being raised as a boy for all those years wasn't for nothing, recalling how she used to climb trees to find quiet spots to read. She finds a foothold and begins to climb, noting how far up it is. Climbing in a skirt proves tricky, and she wishes she were as tall as Yulon. Her foot slips on the bark. She cries out as she loses her grip and begins to fall. A voice shouts her name. She lands safely in someone's arms, looking up in confusion. She finds herself staring into the concerned eyes of Prince Claudia. He has caught her, and they are both on the ground as he asks if she is hurt. He says that he is fine, but his eyes remain fixed on her with concern. He then scolds her, sighing that it begs belief and asking what ninny would climb a tree dressed like that. He asks again if she was injured, and when she says no, he quietly says, "Good." He sighs with relief, explaining that Mary June told him she was looking for something. He adds how surprised he was to finally find her halfway up a tree. He spots the hairpin in the nest and tells her to wait a moment as he begins to walk toward the tree himself. Vio panics, trying to stop him from climbing, but he calmly replies that he is doing the same thing she was attempting. He tells her that this can serve as thanks for mending his cloak, making them even, and she can just look. She is stunned, wondering how he could remember her mending his cloak during the arts festival. As he begins to climb, she thinks it is incredible that he remembers something so insignificant. She watches him, thinking of how she has avoided him and even rejected his invitation, feeling the twigs on the tree aren't helping his ascent. She thinks that he ought to push her away or ignore her as he always did in the past, but is interrupted by the feeling of a raindrop. Realizing it is starting to rain, she calls out his name, telling him to get to shelter at the school, but her thoughts are a whirl of confusion over his kindness. He tells her he can't just leave her and that he can see the hairpin, instructing her to wait below as the rain begins to pour. A determined look crosses her face as she watches him. She thinks that while Prince Claudia has always been chivalrous, the person he was before she went back in time would never have bent over backward like this for her. He calls down to her with a brilliant smile, holding up the hairpin and announcing that he got it. As she stares up at him, soaked by the rain, she acknowledges a thought she has been trying to ignore all along. Sheltering under the tree, she realizes that the Prince Claudia helping her now might be an entirely different person from the one she knew, as he notes the rain won't let up soon and says he'll get towels from the infirmary when it stops. He turns his head to look at her. He calls her name, Violet, and she startles, replying with a flustered, "Weiss." He asks if she is all right, and she insists she is fine, just lost in thought, but she cannot bring herself to meet his gaze. Her heart pounds in her chest as she struggles with her conflicting emotions. She suddenly sneezes, and he moves toward her with concern. He drapes his jacket over her shoulders, telling her to take it because he is much too warm after climbing the tree. She protests that he will catch cold, but his insistent stare makes her thank him for his kindness. He then holds out his hand to her. In his palm is the hairpin, and he tells her that it must be important to her and that he hopes she won't lose it again. Her eyes well up with tears as she looks at the retrieved treasure. She reaches out and gently takes the hairpin from his hand. With tears in her eyes, she thanks him and promises she won't lose it again. He watches her clutch the pin to her chest and remarks that she truly does treasure that hairpin. He identifies the stone as amber mined in Sina and asks who gave it to her, and she replies that Yulan did. As she explains that Yulan had a friend from Sina get it for him, the prince's hand clenches into a tight fist. She notices his dark expression and asks if something is wrong. A memory surfaces in the prince's mind of someone telling him that not much time remains. The voice continues, warning that he wouldn't want to lose her to someone else. The memory concludes with the words, him, for example, as a hand rests on his arm. He looks at Violet, still clutching the hairpin from another man. He never expected to suffer the frustration of hearing another man's name from the lips of the woman he fell for, and he places his hands on her shoulders, saying her name. He looks at her with an intense, heartfelt expression and confesses, I want you to marry me. The world seems to fall away as Violet processes his sudden proposal. From a high tower, a voice asks if someone has finally been settled on. In the throne room, the Prime Minister tells His Majesty that everyone is sighing in relief, as he was getting nervous with Prince Claudia's graduation coming up. The king asks his son, who stands before him, well? He asks what lucky woman his son has proposed to. Claudia announces that it is Duke Vahan's eldest daughter, Lady Violet. The court erupts in murmurs, questioning the Vahan name and remembering that the Duke married a commoner. One courtier clarifies that Violet's mother was the Duke's first wife, but another whispers about the many scandals involving the Vahans. The king, Claudia's father King Gabriella Acrusis, silences the court with a single word. He turns to his son, noting that if memory serves, Claudia once turned his nose up at the idea of proposing to her and asks what has changed. Claudia stands before his father's throne. He admits that he did once dismiss her as just another sly young woman with self-serving ulterior motives. He recalls their awkward meeting in the student council salon and her thoughtful recommendation of Cardina tea. He explains that his assumptions misled him, and that despite his faults, she continued to aid him when he most needed it. Now that he sees her for who she really is, he admires her kindness, sweetness, and fondness for tea, realizing he had jumped to conclusions and falsely accused her. He tells the court that Lady Violet helped him realize how foolish, rigid, and shallow he had been to judge a book by its cover. He states that while people may talk about her father's behavior, Lady Violet bears no blame for that, and her parentage is entirely noble as her mother was Lady Belrose. He glares at the assembled nobles and asks if any of them wish to voice further concerns. The court falls silent as the king laughs, saying that hearing his stubborn son pay serious thought to marriage is a shock. He admits that he had feared Claudia had been seduced by some vixen who had twisted him around her little finger. He notes that Lady Violet is stunning and that Claudia must have been the only man in the kingdom who didn't look twice at her, so hearing he'd changed his tune, he wondered if he'd been seduced. The king then asks if she has accepted his proposal, and Claudia recalls his confession to Violet in the rain. He remembers wrapping his jacket around her to keep her warm. He tells his father that she has not accepted yet, as he asked so suddenly she wasn't sure how to respond, but he believes her answer is a foregone conclusion. The king declares that they will send a messenger to the Vahan estate with an official letter of proposal and that they will announce the engagement at the final ball, as is tradition. Claudia agrees to the plan. His father smiles, giving him his blessing. Outside the throne room, Mila greets His Highness, remarking that the meeting took some time and asking if he argued with the king. Claudia says he did not, but that his father did tease him, and Mila replies that he has finally made up his mind. Claudia says he ought to prepare for the final ball and will head back to the academy, but as he turns to leave, a voice calls his name. Yulan stands at the end of the hall, his expression grim. He walks toward the prince, stating that he hears Claudia propose to Vio. He demands to know what Claudia is up to, reminding him that he couldn't stand her and asking what kind of game he is playing, wanting her only now that she has brushed him off. Claudia's expression remains unreadable. He tells Yulan he may say whatever he likes, but he does not intend to withdraw his proposal, because he loves her. Yulan punches him across the face. Mila rushes forward to intervene, but Claudia tells him to stay back. Yulan grabs Claudia's collar, reminding him that he said he wouldn't allow anyone to harm her. He glares at the prince, his eyes filled with fury. Claudia looks back at him and states that he will rest assured, because he will be the one to protect her from now on. He understands why Yulan is so attached to her, saying it's understandable after he neglected her for so long. But either way, he says, Violet will be the one to decide who she wishes to be with. In the quiet of the classroom, Violet sighs, the prince's words, "I like you," echoing in her mind. She leans on her hand, pensively wondering how things could have possibly ended up like this. She recalls the moment of his confession, how she froze on the spot, unable to make a sound. Realizing she was in shock, he had taken her home by carriage without saying another word. When they arrived at her home, Mary June and her father were there to greet them, surprised to see the prince. Prince Claudia explained that since it was late, he wanted to ensure Lady Violet arrived home safely, earning a profuse apology from her father for the trouble. Her father then asked if Violet had caused any trouble, mentioning he was told she was assisting the student council, a story Vio realized Mary June had concocted. Vio saw the prince sitting in the carriage and knew she had to play along, confirming that she was a great help, much to her surprise. Her father expressed his relief, saying they had needed her until late in the evening and hoped she would get a good rest. Vio was stunned that Prince Claudia had lied for her, protecting her with the excuse. Before he departed, he looked at her and said to know that he was serious and his words were not off the cuff. After that, the carriage rattled away into the night, leaving her in stunned silence. To prove his seriousness, an official marriage proposal was sent from the royal family on his behalf just the day before. The speed of it all makes her head swim. She understands that since she pursued him before, he might think she is still interested. Then again, she recalls how he got engaged to Mary June out of nowhere in her past life, concluding this might just be his natural speed. Still, the situation is baffling because he is supposed to loathe her, making a sudden proposal nonsensical, especially with other ladies like Princess Rosette available. She understands, however, that he is too sincere to propose to just anyone, remembering how he loved Mary June wholeheartedly in his past life despite any criticism. That's right, she remembers now. She was jealous because she wanted that same kind of love for herself. Considering all this, she concludes there is scarcely anything to mull over. As Claudia's fiancée, she would live in the palace, escaping her family before graduation and marrying the prince she once pined for, a dream come true. Her father's family would no longer be saddled with her presence, and aside from Mary June, they would never come near her again. She could even bring Marin so she wouldn't be lonely and could still spend time with Princess Rosette. Better yet, as royalty, she could help Rosette find a husband who would be a strong ally for her kingdom of Lithos. It becomes clear to her that it's possible she has everything to gain from this engagement, and the convent is no longer her only option. Later, in the school dining hall, a student named Gia plops a heaping plate of food in front of his friend before calling out to Miss Vio. He approaches her table with a smile, asking if she is having lunch with her friend today, having heard she's been dining in the lounge. Another student, a girl named Gia, joins him and asks if the seat is taken, correctly guessing that her friend was Princess Rosette. Vio becomes flustered, realizing she had just told Rosette that His Highness wasn't interested in her and now she doesn't know how she can possibly face her again. She deflects, asking Gia why she isn't eating with Yulan today. Gia explains that she hasn't seen him lately, as he's missed 3 days of school, which concerns Vio. Vio asks if he is ill, but Gia says Yulan told her something urgent came up, and she was hoping to see him today. Gia adds that Yulan won't be happy about the news of the engagement, as he is not on good terms with Prince Claudia. This reminds Vio of the last time she told Yulan she liked the prince. She tries to recall the expression he made back then, but finds she cannot call it to mind. Her thoughts are interrupted when Gia slams a large, sweet bun onto her plate with a cheerful, "Gim." He explains that he grabbed a second one just for her because she seemed down, and she thanks him for the kind, if odd, gesture. She finds it strange that he noticed she was down, as she isn't consciously upset about anything. Upon arriving home, she is greeted by an excited Mary June, who exclaims that a dressmaker and jeweler have been waiting for her. Vio is confused by the flurry of activity in her home until her father appears. He explains that the woman is the owner of a haute couture boutique patronized by royals, and he has asked her to make Vio's gown for the upcoming ball. He adds that she will have new jewelry as well and must not wear any of her old trinkets. The dressmaker greets her warmly as her father instructs her to choose whatever she likes, but warns her not to dare embarrass him at the event. The woman adds that they haven't much time and must take her measurements for the perfect dress to announce her engagement in. Vio's eye twitches at the whirlwind of activity. Mary June peeks in on the fitting, a look of wonder on her face. Vio is measured and fitted for a new gown. Mary June gasps, exclaiming that Violet is stunning, even in the sample gowns. She adds that her sister looks like a real princess. She then turns and asks her mother if she still thinks Vio should be the one marrying the prince. Her mother watches Vio, a thoughtful expression on her face. Mary June remembers that her mother had opposed their engagement, but her mother now thinks they suit each other, though it doesn't feel right. Her mother quietly says that once Violet is married, she will leave the house and never come back. With a drooping expression, she admits that she will miss her, a sentiment that surprises Mary June. Mary June realizes that even her mother will be sad when Violet leaves. Later, Vio collapses, feeling completely pooped from the long fitting. She wonders why her mother would want her to marry the prince, recalling how she was made to put on one dress after another so patterns could be drafted. Her waist aches from a tight corset, and she miserably wonders if she is just a doll to them. She recalls her father's words to the jeweler to show her their finest jewelry, realizing that now that she is useful to him, he is wasting no time. She thinks of him as an opportunist as a knock sounds at her door. Marin enters with a cup of warm milk, asking if Vio is retiring for the night and offering to brush her hair. As Marin gently combs her hair, she admits that she is a bit surprised. When Vio asks at what, Marin clarifies she means the engagement, explaining she had assumed Vio lost interest since she'd said little about the prince recently. Vio admits that she was caught off guard as well and didn't see things turning out this way. Marin looks at her intently and observes that Vio does not seem very happy about it. Vio quickly refutes this, insisting she is happy because the arrangement will give her a leg up. She says she is honored that he chose her and always believed she'd marry into the royal family, but still feels Prince Claudia is too good for her. She confesses that it just doesn't feel real, and her emotions have not yet caught up to the reality of the situation. She then turns to her maid with a serious question. She asks Marin if she will come to the palace with her after the wedding, and Marin enthusiastically insists she would stay to support her no matter what. Marin says of course she will come, as the thought of Vio having a second maid never crossed her mind. Vio tells her that Marin will always be her one and only maid. Marin takes Vio's hand, promising that she will always stand by her, no matter what. With tears in her eyes, she vows to walk any road with Vio, so long as she chooses it. She pleads with her not to give up on anything more. Vio is overcome by her maid's fierce loyalty and gently squeezes her hand, whispering, "Please don't." Her expression is filled with a deep, unspoken emotion. She promises her devoted maid that she won't give up. With that emotional exchange, Vio finally feels completely pooped. Marin narrates that from the day she was born, she had nothing to call her own. That changed 8 years ago on a snowy day, when a girl named Violet found her lying weak on the ground and asked if she was dead. Violet warned Marin that she would freeze to death if she remained there and offered to guide her to a convent or an almshouse. Lying in the snow, Marin looked up into Violet's concerned eyes. As Violet reached out her hand, Marin weakly wondered if she was a goddess. The last sight Marin saw before she lost consciousness was the beautiful, shocked face of Violet looking down at her. Marin awakens in a warm, luxurious room, and a maid informs her that she is awake. Blinking in the unfamiliar surroundings, Marin learns from the maid that she is in the manor of Duke Vahan. Violet, disguised as the young master, enters the room and instructs a maid to bring Marin something easy to eat. The young master Violet walks to her bedside, expressing relief that Marin is awake and asking how she feels. Marin recognizes Violet, who explains that Marin had startled her by fainting just outside the estate's gate. Violet asks about Marin's family, but Marin explains she is an orphan who has wandered from place to place since leaving her orphanage. After a moment of consideration, Violet declares that Marin's situation is perfect, much to Marin's confusion. Violet explains that it's perfect because she also has no friends, and she then confirms the girl's name is Marin. A blushing Violet offers Marin a job at the manor, admitting she had hoped Marin would agree to stay when she rescued her. Marin asks why her, and Violet explains that she wants someone to chat with, as all the other servants are grown-ups and she is not permitted to leave the manor. Violet then reveals the main reason she chose her, because she knew from the very beginning that Marin was a girl. Marin's eyes widen in utter shock at Violet's words. Marin narrates that back then, she never could have guessed what Violet was feeling when she said that. Violet explains that she learned to distinguish between boys' and girls' hands from holding them during games at the orphanage. It was by touching Marin's hand in the snow, Violet reveals, that she knew her gender. Marin expresses her doubt, asking if Duke Vahan would truly allow a stray like her to be employed. Violet takes Marin's hands, firmly declares her Marin of the Vahan estate, and asks her to become her personal maid. Marin accepts the offer, and from that moment, Lady Violet became her whole world. Marin remembers Violet as a fascinating girl, both intelligent and mature, with a deep love for tea, desserts, and stargazing. But at times, Marin would glimpse a profound and terrible loneliness hidden within Violet. Seeing that deep sadness in Violet, even without understanding its source, broke Marin's heart. Months after being hired, Marin focused on learning all of Violet's favorite things to make her smile, until a butler summoned the young master to her ladyship Belrose's chamber. As Violet leaves, Marin asks another butler for the young master's real name. The butler reacts with startling anger, grabbing Marin by her collar. He fiercely warns Marin to only ever call her the young master and to never speak of her name again. Looking back, Marin realized many things about the Vahan estate were odd. Duke Vahan was never present in the manor he owned, and Violet's mother, Belrose, avoided all contact with anyone except Violet. Marin walks through the halls of her memory, recalling the strange and silent household. She remembers the day she saw Belrose lovingly caress Violet's face, calling her Ald, and remarking how handsome she was. Marin later learned that Ald was the name of the Duke himself, the master of the manor. Belrose then leaned close to Violet and whispered, "I love you, Belrose." The scene left Marin completely horrified and shaken. Her heart pounded with a terrible understanding. Violet had given her a place to belong, but Violet herself was trapped in darkness. Marin now saw that while she had been saved from the cold, her master, Violet, was suffering all alone. Later, Marin confronts Violet, addressing her by her true name after learning it from the head butler. With tears in her eyes, Marin asks Lady Violet why she continues to suffer through this painful deception. Violet admits she knows the lie cannot last and she can never replace her father, but Marin protests that the situation is too cruel. But Violet explains with a sad smile that living as Ald is the only way to make her mother, Belrose, smile at her. Hearing this tragic reason, Marin pulls the crying Violet into a firm, comforting embrace. Marin's narration concludes that the one who saved her life on that cold, snowy night was Lady Violet. In that moment, Marin knew she could never fix Violet's shattered heart. But because Violet had saved her, Marin swore a silent promise to always remain by her side. From that day on, all Marin could do was hold on to Violet's hand and hope that one day, she could help her find a reason to smile with genuine happiness. A butler cheerfully announces that he has brought the chocolate tarts they were waiting for. Violet and Princess Rosette stare blankly at the plates set before them. Princess Rosette slumps slightly, complaining that the butler gave her the dark chocolate tart without thinking, even though they had specified that she wanted the sweeter one. Laughing at the simple mix-up, Rosette suggests they simply trade plates, and Violet agrees.